people, let's all get started. We got this is one of the biggest nights of the whole budget committee, and Ed is sitting there to back me up, but he had a tooth pulled. I said, I got a tooth filled this morning, so we're dentally challenged here tonight. So anyway, we'll get started. We're going to start with the library. And in my tab, that is number 7, and Nikki's going to join us. Did everyone get a chance to, you would have got these electronically, the actual details?
No.
I think there were a few scattered around, but Audra was going to also put them on, so it's projected up on the screen as well.
So how many of you didn't actually get the detail? How many people didn't get the detail?
The one that you emailed out to us was absolutely unreadable. It was tiny. So
the email
Copies here. So I'm going to start passing these around. If you didn't get a copy, please grab one now. I don't think...
But it will be on the screen behind us, so...
I get the agenda.
I'll put mine on pretty soon. Okay, this is the detail one. This is the, yeah, it already. Let's see my orange page here.
There's more than one copy there.
I didn't get a. Let's take them together.
Be our attention, and sorry, you are Marty Wolf, Chairman.
I am a trustee.
One of the trustees of the library.
So we're going to start with Marty Wolf, who's going to just do a short presentation as a trustee, and then I will talk about the budget.
So my name is Marty Wolf, and I am a trustee at the Camden Library and a local educator. And so I just wanted to share a couple of quick stories with you. First of all, I spent the morning at the History Center on the second floor of the library because I wanted to read about Mary Louise Curtis Bach, because I wanted to connect on a deeper level. What was her vision and what was her mission? And I discovered a woman who, in 1916, 103 years ago, I could just see her standing on a vacant lot where the hotel was.
The Ocean
House hotel had burned in 1903. She was standing there. I could just see her looking at the parks, the lot, and thinking about her vision for a library and for parks for the town of Camden. And so I could see her standing there holding a crystal ball and just looking into it and being able to look forward 103 years from that point. Like, what future did she make possible 103 years later? And so she's looking at her ball. She can see Lorraine Murray, who facilitates the girls who code at the library. Now, their motto is teach a girl to code and she'll change the world. And this is a program for middle school and high school students to learn, female students, girls, to learn computer science. Maybe she'd see Amy Hand sitting on the floor of the picker room with reading books to babies and their moms. In the afternoon, she'd be releasing monarch butterflies from the children's garden with the older students. Sarah Duggan she's organizing books for the homebound readers who can't get to the library, so her volunteer can deliver them to their doorstep. On the History Center, I could see, Mary Louise, we switch roles. Wyatt Berry could be using the diorama that MB&A donated to the library to tell the history of our town to new residents, new property owners. In my neighborhood, we have a new couple from Wisconsin, we have a couple from Pennsylvania, we have a couple from Dallas, and when new folks come, I like to take them down, and that's what Wyatt does for them. Mary Louise looks in her crystal ball. She could see in the Centennial Wing, she could see the adult Spanish group meeting near the juvenile nonfiction. There's a college admissions consultant meeting under the rotunda with one of her students from the high school. And it goes on and on. In the back corner, my favorite, Mary Louise could see those gentlemen, you can see a picture you have on the beanbags there with their iPads. They're doing their homework. And so all of these pictures and all of these visions and all of these moments she could see 103 years later. I would think that Mary Louise Curtis Buck is seeing the Center of Public Life, a place that promotes healthy youth development and lifelong learning for all of the citizens of Camden. And that she sees a dynamic 21st century 5-star library where people come to read and connect and discover. And yes, I think she would be very pleased that she'd seen her crystal ball. So now it's our time, and now it's our turn to look into the future of our Center of Public Life and to see what is it you see in your crystal ball. So I will turn it over to Nikki Mayonis, our Executive Director for Camden Public Library.
Okay, well, thank you, Marty. I'm here tonight to talk specifics about our budget. And first I want to say that I'm very pleased to be here and pleased to answer any questions you have. But I'm going to walk you through very quickly our budget, how we bring money in and how we spend it. And again, just the highlights, so it won't take more than just a few moments. And then I will be happy to answer questions. So our income picture looks like this. And you can roughly follow along with me if you have one of these. But again, this is big picture items. We plan in the next fiscal year to bring in about $244,000 in donations. So let me say that again, $244,000 in donations. We work very, very hard to bring this money in, and I think we do just an outstanding job, and a job like no other library that I know about in the state. Also in this fiscal year coming up, we plan to bring in $50,000 with our Harbor Arts shows, our meeting room rentals, and Passing the Hat at programs. Those 2 Harbor Arts shows bring in the bulk of that $50,000. Used book sales, I think probably lots of you have attended those, and I was talking to someone earlier who's bringing books that we can sell at the used books sales. That will bring in about $30,000. Photocopies, faxes, non-resident library card fees, that will bring in another $36,000. We are asking the town of Camden for support at the level of $478,000. Endowment and other income such as weddings and so forth will bring in about $147,000. So the short version of what I just ran through is that library trustees and staff and volunteers will bring in just over $507,000, with the town of Camden support at $478,000. So that's basically a 52-48% split, and that's what we're proposing for the next fiscal year. Very similar, I should say, to the split this year.
Do you want questions from income and then expense, or just?
I can if you like. Are there questions about any of
About
that?
the income? I was just wondering, are fewer people getting married? Because for the amphitheater to go down. I remember last year we talked about maybe actually that you guys were making it a steal.
Where do you see the amphitheater going down?
Rental, actuals for 17 was 146. Oh, actuals, oh, so, well, the 153 was actuals 18, and we're budgeting 147. It's not a huge significance.
I think you're in the wrong column. Amphitheater rental, we're actually budgeting $28,900.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry,
Right.
I'm way down here.
Because it has gone up.
It has
You're
gone
right.
up. You did?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We did, yeah.
We did, good.
So any other questions quickly about income? And we can come back to this stuff as well. Yes?
I mean, I ask this every year, and it goes with what Kathy was just asking, but what is the current rental fee for weddings?
$950.
You need to raise it.
You know, I remember we had that discussion a year or two ago, and we've actually, we have looked at details again, and we are very comparable for what we offer, because, you know, you can't do cantor reception in the amphitheater.
Understood.
So we actually are very comparable. But I'm happy to, bring that back to the table again and
Yeah,
look at it.
I mean, I
Sure.
think you just need to look at what you're bringing in there and then look at your expenses to maintain the amphitheater and so
Yep,
on and so forth.
that's very true. Yep.
And do people rent their own chairs and tables? Is that extra for them?
No, the chairs come that's part of the 950, yeah. And we don't usually provide tables, it's the chairs. Yes, sir.
The staff, is that a cost of living increase, or are you adding somebody?
We don't do cost of living. What we do is merit, and merit only. I know the town does cost of living as well as step increases, and we have a different approach. It's only on merit. It can be 0 to basically 5%. Yes.
I'm curious, this is your first year with the new campaign donations replacing grant to grant. How's that going in the first year? You're budgeting what you budgeted last year, but
Yeah, so the campaign is going to go public during National Library Week in April. And the campaign is to help us build our current endowment. We're calling it Campaign for the Future. We are at 1.5 million, and the goal is 2.5. Because we need that income, as you can see. That's what it's all about, is about income, steady income, so that the library needs to be, the way I look at it, at library income and library expenses, it's a business. And we have to know what's coming in so we know what we can spend. And the way it's been approached, I think, for long before my time, and for more recent years, is we have a gap, and which we hope to fill with this campaign. And we wait on kind of the whims of fortune as to whether or not we're going to be able to fill that gap every year. So this will totally stabilize our income, and it will be, that's our strategy. We need to run the whole place just as any responsible business would be running the department. Okay?
Maintenance, is that general maintenance, or is there specific projects that,
It's a little bit of both, but generally speaking, it's general maintenance. Larger projects, we try to do one quote-unquote larger project every year as part of that, but it just depends on what the projects are as they come along. And you'll see in a moment when I get there that we do have a capital request in this year as well. So the bulk of that money is what is needed to keep the place clean, keep it in reasonable repair and so forth. But it is not, that money cannot cover really large facility projects.
okay?
Yes.
What do you see for the impact of the new Rockport Library when that comes online? Because people are going to be moving, so you're going to see a revenue shift for people probably using new facilities.
I don't know. Generally speaking, the first year of a new or newly renovated public library is that, that community really uses it very heavily. So we might have some impact. I don't see a tremendous impact on us, though, John. I don't.
You do have a large amount of Rockport people that use this facility.
We do. I think a lot of them will still come, but I don't know the answer to that for sure. Historically speaking, again, it's usually that first year that the facility is really heavily used. People want to go and check it out and so forth, and then they decide whether or not it's the kind of service that they really want. And we have a very different operation than Rockport. So I don't know, I don't have Mary Louise's crystal ball, but I think in the end, after that, perhaps that first year, I don't know that it's going to have a huge impact on us.
And the impact would only be in that 20,000.
It would.
For the external.
That's true.
Library card
Yeah.
users.
Yes,
I
sir.
know that Camden is kind of a regional center for all the outlying towns and everything. And I do know that there's a fee for a library card for non-residents.
Yes.
Can you tell us how that system works and how you set it up?
So I'm not sure that I quite understand the question. I'll talk and then I'll see if it. We do charge a non-resident fee to anyone who does not pay taxes in Camden. They don't have to be a full-time resident, but they have to own property if they're not. That fee is $48 a year for library service. And it's comparable to some libraries in the area, not to Rockport, interestingly enough. Rockport charges less. But it is comparable to, say, Rockland and just a little bit more than Belfast charges. Did that answer your question?
A little bit. I also believe that you have like a policy for school students, for any of the regional schools?
We also provide cards to our school district, so to the 5 towns, for children only, and for them to use books for their purposes. Yes. And that really, I think, when you think about that, that only makes sense, because, our children's librarians go into the classroom. These classrooms have kids from all 5 school districts, all 5 towns, I should say, and they can't only be talking to Camden kids. They're talking to children in general, yes. And so we do support our school system.
I support that. I just wanted to kind of make sure that it was known to,
Yes.
that we were actually doing that for other
Yes.
towns.
Okay, so are we ready to go on to expenses? Again, I'm just going to hit highlights here, so you have some idea how we spend our money. Computers and tech costs us about $20,000 a year. Because we are not a town department, we belong to the town, of course, but we are not a town department, so we outsource such things as bookkeeping and accounting and personnel management, and that costs us approximately $20,000 a year also. We are professionally audited or reviewed every year. This particular year that we're talking about, that'll come in at $6,000. We'll spend $69,000 on books and ebooks and all, what we call in the business materials. Maintenance and cleaning and heating and utilities and other building needs in general will come in at $100,000. Programs and fundraising events come in at $27,000. Payroll and benefits for staff, and don't forget we're open 7 days a week, 64 hours a week. That comes in at $634,000. And last but not least, funds to keep up Harbor Park and Amphitheater comes in at just over $54,000. So one other thing I wanted to mention before I turn it over to you for questions either about expenses or in general, is I wanted to mention that capital request that I talked about just briefly a moment ago. We do have a capital request, which is, if you have this sheet in front of you, is the very bottom line on the last page. The capital request is for $40,000 to update our HVAC control system. And again, HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, air conditioning. It's that system's control. Because it's a multi-story, 15,000 square foot building, it's a very sophisticated controls system, and it is literally controlled by a computer program and has been for many years. So the software that we're currently using is totally outdated, cannot be maintained, and the software speaks to a number of valves, and it needs to be updated. We were advised late last spring that the life of that system was gone and that we needed it to be replaced. Because we were so late in the budget system, we were advised again to wait for this budget system to see if we could limp along through the winter with the current control system, and we've been lucky so far. Everything seems to be working now, but it is something that needs to be done as soon as possible. So our request is for the funds to cover that update of the control system, again at $40,000. And I should say that we have a number of other repairs to the building which we are going to be trying to cover out of the library budget and or via grants. But we can't cover it all. And this is something that is it really needs to be done, and it needs to be done this year.
Nikki, can you
Yes.
explain why it's so important to have it repaired or replaced?
Well, one day, when it fails, it will fail in whatever mode that it's in, and we won't be able to change temperatures. If it's in heat mode, it will be heating 24 hours a day. If it's in the closed building mode and it fails, we won't be able to heat the building, etc. It will freeze, and it will have to be fixed then. They cannot repair it. They've made that very clear. So we're just trying to be proactive here and save everybody money in the end.
So will you put a system that's similar to what you've got there, or will you take it to another level and have it smart controls and people?
Well, I think that the new system is to another level, just because it's a brand new system. But it is, the same company will put it in, but it is a smarter system.
So it'll shut down rooms and things like that? or-
Yes, it will. Yes.
Smarter spend less money or smarter spend more money? Because ultimately, what you're asking,
That's a good question, yeah. But hopefully, ultimately, you're right, it will save us money because we won't have to heat. We have some of that capacity now, but not to the extent we would with a brand-new smart system. You're right.
I have one more question about it. What it was explained to me, and I think it's important to know, is that if the system fails in the summertime, because the great percentage of the stocks are underground, it would cause irreplaceable harm to what was there because of mold and such.
He's talking about the humidity controls, because there's all that paper, it's a public library. We have to keep it relatively dry. We have to keep it at around 52% humidity. And that's standard for my industry. And if and when that system fails, there will be no more humidity controls. And I don't know what would happen over time. We'd have to get it fixed immediately. Otherwise, there would be damage to the books and everything else. And I should say, it's not only the books. On the second floor, we have really hundreds, if not thousands, well, actually it's multi-thousands, of unique photographs and documents that are totally irreplaceable. So it's very important. Yes, sir.
You said the system has already been replaced, new, the HEV?
No, I
I
didn't
thought
say
you
that.
just said it was a new system.
Needs the one that they would
It needs to be a new system. No,
So that's why I was going, the discussion, this has been going on now for a couple of years, this discussion.
It was late last spring, yeah.
Last budget cycle. And if I recall, part of your capital project was replace the system, right, or upgrade the HAV for both buildings, the lower and the upper? That was part of the discussion last time
That
around?
was part, but never made it through the budget cycle because we weren't advised of it until May.
No, what I'm saying is your plans were to upgrade the whole HAV with your capital plan, when you do the roof and all of that.
The best advice that we have at this point is to replace the controls system, and because we've taken very good care of the equipment itself and done upgrades to the equipment over the years, a little bit at a time, that we will stick with the overall system and hardware, if you will, the boiler and all of the rest. But the control system, as I said, is not. It can't
Where I was going with
be repaired.
this
It can't be
is,
maintained.
during the discussion,
Yep.
it was said that if you did this system upgrade with the new controls, it may not be compatible with your new system that you put in at the time. That's what was said last year.
I can't recall that honestly, John. But I'm telling you now, and I'm being. Pardon?
I said I listened to you.
Right. I'm being very straightforward. The new control system will be compatible with the equipment that we have and with any plans we have for further equipment. Yes, sir.
What's the downtime when you replace the system?
Couple of days, 2 to 3 days. That's if it's planned. If it's not, if it goes down, it will be weeks. It is again what we are being told. But if it's planned and they know, they have everything on hand that they need, it'll be 2 or 3 days. And so that's another good point. We want to do it at a good time of year. We don't want to do it in January, and we don't want to do it in July. We want to do it as quickly as we can and plan it. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One goes back to what Drew asked a minute ago, and I made my joke, but I guess I didn't really get the answer I was hoping to hear, which is this smarter system brings potential savings down the road, and have they given you an idea what those savings might be?
I
it's a
can't
hope?
absolutely guarantee that, Kip, because I don't know that answer. What I do know is that it is, in fact, a smarter system. We will have more control over each of the rooms. Right now, for instance, if somebody complains that they're cold, I can go in and I can bump the temperature up, but it will literally take 12 to 14 hours before we feel it. With a new system, from what I've read about the system and what I've been told about the system, that will be much more immediate. But I can't sit here tonight and honestly tell you that I know we're going to see a 10% savings, because I don't know that.
And I guess I had another question, but then 2A to my other question is, do they give you a lifetime on this system? I mean, we look at a $40,000 expenditure. What are we talking 10 years? We talking, $4K a year?
I think we're talking 10 to 20 years.
10 to 20?
Yep.
Okay. And then my next question is in addition to is this in addition to the 478 that's being asked for?
It is, yes.
Is. Okay.
It would come out of a different part of the budget.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
What are you heating the facility with? Oil or propane?
Oil.
Where is that listed?
Let's see.
515.
Yeah, 6515, right, whoever said that, correct.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think you answered this, but I just want to reaffirm this. This is, what we're talking about is an upgrade to basically the computer system, the brains, that runs the system.
That's correct.
All of the hardware that it's going to run, the heating units, the exchangers, the actual physical part of it, this is all compatible and has been maintained right along, and that is going to stay in that situation, so it will evolve with the brains, so to speak.
So what is part of the control system is, and I don't remember the technical term for this, but it's basically the valves. That will be replaced with the new control system, because the computer needs to speak to these valves that turn it off and on, and
So there will be some physical hardware.
Yes, there is some physical
as part
hardware.
of this.
When I was saying that that the current system, has been maintained, I really meant things like the boiler, that the big pieces of hardware that run the system.
And when was that put in? Is that an original equipment in '96?
So we did a bunch of retro fittings, I guess that's the word, in around 2011, as I recall, and the state was offering many discounts for public buildings in our situation. So we went through the entire hardware part of the system at that point and did a bunch of replacements, and so it's in good shape. It has been maintained.
Is the vendor the same for all of the equipment, or is it?
It is now. It wasn't it hasn't always been, but we have found that in the end, it's. I think it's a cost savings, and it's certainly easier in terms of time consumption for our controls people to be somehow affiliated to the people that are taking care of the hardware.
Are any of these vendors the same people that do like the town office here, or is there any compatibility there?
Mechanical services?
And that is mechanical services, yes. Yeah,
It's the same.
they're one of the big vendors in the state, yes.
I got confused in the middle of that, I'm sorry. The request to the town is the 478, and then a second request for 40,000, or is...
The 40,000 is in a different part of your notebook. It's in the capital improvements area.
That is two numbers that the town is being asked to fund.
That's correct.
Okay.
So what's the total amount for the HVAC upgrade then?
40,000.
And so did you want the town to pay for all of that? There's not a separate amount that the library is paying?
It would be all of it, yep. As I said, we are facing many other facility needs as well. Yes, sir.
Do you have a yearly contract price for your oil per gallon? Is it a frozen contract price?
We do. I don't have a price yet for next fiscal year, but yes, we do, yes.
I'm a little surprised that your budget for this year is only about $80 over last year.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that will honestly come through when in fact we have a contract. When I put this together, prices, I did, do some research. Prices were looking better than they are today.
Well, we're still on HVAC 6510, which is within your building needs budget. In 15, you had a big hit. That must have been the maintenance, but but you are from 18 actual at 4.7. You are actually budgeting a higher cost to just operate it after it's installed. Is that am I reading that right?
Right. So we've actually been budgeting for a number of years, 8,000, and some years we spend less, and some years we spend more.
Oh, I see.
Because,
You're waiting for, yeah.
one just doesn't know.
Okay,
Exactly,
okay.
yes.
So the reality was you only spent 4.7.
Yes, that is the
But that
reality.
first
Yeah,
year
we had a
was-
good year. Yes, sir.
Membrane for the roof, when is that? What's the plan for taking care of that?
Well, we're still doing lots of research on it. We just got another bid on some of the work that would need to be done, and we're, Dennis McGurk here is the board member who's been in charge of putting all of that together. I believe that what we're looking at is membrane replacement in the next 2 to 4 years. We're not looking at it this year or next, unless, again,
Unless there's a problem.
because, no one really knows when that's going to fail.
Are funds being put away? Have we been putting funds away for this?
We have not, no, we have not. Yes, sir.
Two things. You don't bid with the town for your oil?
We go usually with Knox County, and I think you guys go with Knox County as well, so yes.
Okay, and I thought you started a capital program for that roof project last year. They were talking about starting raising money for the replacement of that roof.
No, that's not, no, John, no, we talked to the select board about, to give you a heads up. We've talked to you guys a couple times actually about the need for it, but no, we never said we could put money aside for it. It's going to be a big number.
I know that, but I'm just saying, I recall there was going to be a capital campaign to try to raise the money for that roof project.
The campaign, the campaign is really for endowment.
Okay. Well, I'm going to second
25,
John.
yes.
I've heard that, I want to say almost 2 years in a row, that there was going to be a capital campaign initiated for the roof replacement and also that subsurface roof replacement. So did we hear incorrectly there?
Initially, the campaign, we talked about a $5 million campaign, and we were going to, a $5 million campaign, and we were going to help with a number of larger facility needs. That was at the very beginning, and we very quickly, based on feedback we got from donors and so forth, realized that $5 million was going to be impossible for us, and that the immediate need was to fill this budget gap.
I know that there are a number of trust funds and different endowments and different funds that come in. Are any of those designed towards capital improvements or to maintenance, or are they specifically dedicated to certain things, or?
They were all designed to be for operating. They are part of how we operate,
Okay.
and we couldn't operate without them.
Have you discussed taking out a loan or a bond of some sort to pay for these larger needs, the HVAC and the The membrane, the roof
We've
membrane?
discussed with the select board, and that's why we've talked with the select board a couple of times about the possibility of a townwide bond for the membrane specifically.
Is there a number that, for that?
There isn't
I
a
know it's
number
down the
that,
road, but-
there isn't a number that I can quote, because again, we are still working in the background, but it's going to be a big number.
Do you have a ballpark? And you say big number, that means different things to different people. So, I'm not trying to pin you down, I just don't have an understanding. I think the board doesn't have an understanding.
I guess I'm a little hesitant because I think that, I don't want this to get on the paper, because I don't know what the number will be. But let me give you a very broad ballpark. The number will be somewhere between 500,000 and $1 million.
This is for the roof over the underground part of the library,
It is, yeah.
and we're around 23, 24 years into its lifespan.
Yes, it was 1996,
What
yeah.
was the projected lifespan, and what was the projected way to go about fixing it when the time came?
So the projected lifespan is between 20 and 30 years. And the best information that we have is, because it's been very protected, that 25 to 30 is what we should be looking at. So that's why I think that we need to be looking at this very seriously in 2 years.
And what, is there any kind of plan at the moment for a squirrel digs a hole in it? Right now it happens, tonight, you go in the morning and there's a leak. Is there any, contingency or emergency plan for something of that nature?
Not with that kind of number behind it, no.
Any other questions?
What if the board does not approve funding the roof?
Funding the roof?
Replacing the membrane?
You
What if
mean,
the-
you mean
the-
you mean soon? Yeah.
What if they will not give you the funds to do that?
Well, it's a town building, it's town property, and it's a town decision.
Do we start putting money away for at least 3 or 4 years to at least have a jump on it? We know we're going to spend $500,000 to $1 million on it. Shouldn't we be putting
Sandy,
money?
if I had that money to put away, I would be doing so.
So you need to ask the select board for that money. Put it
I
away.
don't know, when we went through what we do to bring in our income, I don't know what else we can be doing. We're doing a lot. We're doing our capacity.
No, I think the point is, it sounds like you've talked to the select board, but you're broaching the topic of
Right.
getting them to do a reserve fund. A lot of these positions have reserve funds, so I'm assuming you guys are talking about that.
I think
What we've been talking about is a possible bond issue.
Just that,
Right.
not actually putting in a reserve.
Has there been any discussion of a fundraiser specifically for, I think that was my main concern, is that I hadn't seen any public outreach to say, hey, everybody, this roof is going to have to be replaced soon. Your cherished library is in danger. We need to start raising funds for this. I think it's easier for the taxpayers to swallow a little bit after there's been, a very visible public appeal for donations.
Well, the situation we're in now, Chris Allison, is that we're working very hard on the campaign that will ensure library operating. Once we've completed that campaign, I think, certainly we might, after, discussion and so forth with the select board, we might try to do public outreach as well for a portion of it. But this other thing, we have to get through that. We need that. We need to cover the gap if we're going to continue to have library service as we're all accustomed to in this town.
Excuse me, I'd like to comment, excuse me, on my perspective on this. It's sometimes I think people think that the library is separate from the town, And when we're asking the library to do fundraising, it seems to me it's almost as if we were looking for the wastewater plant, which we just took a big bond out because it's town property, to do a fundraising for them to fix their, the wastewater plant. I think because the library does such an excellent job, if they didn't do the fundraising they did for their operations, our town would be, it would cost us $1 million a year instead of $500,000 a year to do the job that they've been doing right now. And one of the things, if you look at the comments on the back of what you supplied about how much used our businesses at the library compared to all the towns around us, it's pretty amazing. And I think that we need to look at it. It is a town building, and we can't go to other people and say, well, it's your responsibility to do the library because it's separate. And it's our library. It's not somebody else's. It's not the trustees' library. It's not somebody else's.
Historically, though, nobody, just asking questions about financing is in no way an attack on the library. Everybody loves the library. The history of the library, though, is a history of private fundraising. So historically, major capital improvements, the library building itself has been privately fundraised, and the operating expenses have been paid for by the town. There have been a few things like Harbor Park that was shared by the town, but I guess my concern is the departure from the historic way that we've done things, and I've spent a lot of time talking to people that have been on the library board over the years and many years ago, and the feeling that I'd gotten from them was that when they raised all the money to do the addition for the library, that it was also the understanding that that would be the ongoing cost of that would be fundraised too, because it's sort of not fair to have a bunch of people donate money to make a bigger library, but then the taxpayers get stuck with the ongoing costs. And of course there's going to be some sort of a negotiation, and that's been part of the criticism with the Snowball too a little bit, is that the redevelopment raised the operating expenses in some ways. But this would be a major departure. The reason that the town doesn't have any line in its budget that's library building capital reserve, or, we have reserve funds for all these other buildings, and we don't have one for the library. So it is a departure from the way it's been done in the past.
Well, with all due respect, I think that things have been done in a variety of ways over the years. The most notable exception to that is the bond that was taken out to improve Harbor Park and Amphitheater. That was taken out in the mid-2000s, and again, that was a town bond that everyone voted on and approved. Then there was another situation. This is just, again, off the top of my head here. About 5 years ago, there was a horrific storm. We lost lots of trees in Harbor Park and Amphitheater, and the town stepped in to do cleanup and to do tree replacement there. And even, I think maybe in 2014, something like that, when we had to rebuild the original steps and railing at the front entrance, that was a town-driven project. Because again, the town owns the building. That was a town-driven project. That was a grant that the current development director wrote, and the money went to the town so that we could get that work done. So I think things have been done in a variety of ways over the years. I think that that the library has stepped in whenever possible, and I really mean that, whenever possible, to keep up the facility, but we can't do it every single time, particularly when we may be looking at a very large number for that membrane. And getting back to the discussion for tonight, that HVAC system, we are looking, as I said, at a number of repairs already this year, and we will be very stretched to cover those. So I really don't know what we will do if you deny us that particular fund money.
Question for Audra. I understood that this was going to be included into the town's regular capital repair, replacement. Is the roof been put in, the HAV systems and whatever else they requested, been included into the town's plans going forward?
Yes, and we can talk about that when we get to the section where we look at what's proposed for this year. I've included in your packets the whole spreadsheet of capital projects that we have upcoming across the entire town, and the library projects are included on that.
Why I bring this up, I'm not saying your system's not need to be fixed, but we also have a system that's failed in one of our own buildings, which needs to be addressed. So they're both as important. It's just a matter of
With all due respect, John, one of your own buildings, this is your building.
one of our regular other buildings.
This is your building.
Well, it is to a point. I've been down, never mind. That's a story we don't need to get into. I agree, it's a town building. I'm not saying that it shouldn't go to a vote for a bond, maybe down the road for a roof. I don't know. That's up to the board. But should be part of the regular maintenance budget of the town, because everything in this town has a date when it needs to be replaced, and it's included in that, so we can plan for it.
So I'd say later on, we can talk about this in the context of all of the other capital improvement projects that we have to look at across the town. And it's going to be good input from everybody sitting around this table to help balance the priorities and figure out how does this fit into the broader scope of what we have to do.
I think the discussion might not have been as detailed if we had known that money was being proposed to put money away for the library. And I think that's the prudent thing to do, really do.
I was curious, I'm jumping topics now, but on staffing, what does that represent in headcount when you look at your payroll expenses?
There are 17, about half of them are part-timers.
Okay.
Again, 7 days a week, 64 hours a week, so yeah. 10, just over 10 FTE.
10 FTE? Perfect, okay. And how many of...
And all, and so forth as well.
And how many does that leave that are eligible for benefits of...
There are 8 people eligible for benefits.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
9 eligible for benefits.
Any final questions?
What we're looking at here is just your operating. The HVAC is not in the number. I see on
Correct.
this page.
That's right. It's
It's
in
elsewhere.
It is. It's in tab 9, I think.
So in fact,
Yeah.
what we're actually asking to vote on is the town's portion, which is, and the department head and the town manager are in agreement to $475,000.
I'd say 478, and that was a miscalculation error on my part. So for the budget committee request, I think Nikki's asked for 478. That's correct, yeah.
78.
So that was going to be my question. What was the difference in your...
Oh, it was just, I looked through the bottom line, and Nikki had said 48%, and it calculated it closer to 4. I think it was just a rounding thing. No reason other than that.
I'll move that we accept the $478,000 request from the library.
I'll second it.
Okay. I won't touch it, right? Somewhere down there.
All in favor?
And Nikki's as well.
Opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing Okay. Next up is the harder thing.
Yeah, sure did.
You don't have the harbor?
Because they're doing some dredging already up there.
Same tab as the other one, nothing behind the line.
Page 28.
Do you want to pass this to Richard?
Things moving, we do have a big night. We've got Steve Pixley here for the harbor. And harbor is page 28. You want to talk us through and draw our attention to anything?
207 this way.
Well, if you look at it's not much different from the years previous. There's a 5.9% change from FY19. There's no glaring differences.
Yeah, look at John's.
I could ask, I could just answer any questions if you have any.
I can talk to a few items that account for changes. So the full-time wages line, Steve had been, prior to this year, he had been an hourly employee as opposed to a salaried employee. So we wanted to get all department heads on as salaried employees, so we had some predictability, particularly for Steve's position. He can end up working a lot of overtime in the summer, and it made it so that it could at times be very unpredictable. So we moved him onto a salary, and that kind of accounted for the difference in full-time wages. And we also had to look at getting some of the other harbor employees onto our step and grade plan. There were two harbor employees, the deputy harbor master, that was Jim's title, right?
Jim and Leo.
And what's Janet's position called? The harbor?
Receptionist.
Receptionist. They had not traditionally been on the town's step and grade plan, so we needed to move them on to that pay scale so that they were comparable with other employees in the town because they hadn't been classified at all. So we classified those positions and got them, into an area where they were being paid comparable to what other employees who were doing similar jobs within the town were doing. So that accounted for the difference in wages. Another item that I think is worth looking at, the harbor management software. So we talked about that last year, and we've had some troubles with the implementation of it this year. On Steve's end, from the harbor management end of it, it's pretty much doing what we need it to be doing. We had hoped that it was going to be integrated with the billing side of, operating the harbor, and that hasn't worked out as well. They've requested additional funds to try to make that work. We're going to be looking at other options. We're pretty hopeful that a company that we're working with to develop our new website might be able to help out with a solution that might be lower cost and more easy to use. The company that we're currently going with now, they're really the only sort of off-the-shelf product for harbor management. Wouldn't you say that's
That is a good
more or
way to
less the
say
case?
that, yeah.
There's a chance that, we could figure out some of the problems and resolve them with that company, but, we want to keep our options open because we don't want to be paying a large licensing fee for something that isn't going to work very well for us long-term. So that's still a work in progress and something that I thought was worth mentioning.
So the system at the Snowball didn't work as far as moving it down? Because that was one of the things that POS system?
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
But it was supposed to be in both places.
I think what you're talking about is the credit card machine.
Credit card part of it and the keeping track of the cash.
We transitioned over to Inform Me, which is no longer a cost to us.
So how is cash transactions treated now if somebody pays for a mooring overnight, or not a mooring, but a tie up at the dock, and they give you cash? You have a receipt book that's numbered, that's tracked, or how is it taken care of?
Yeah, there's a receipt book numbered, goes to a lockbox, that goes up with all the credit card receipts every day, or every other day, depending how busy we are.
Okay.
Is there going to be a discussion of the overall income from the harbor? Because I know
Yes.
that's in a different spot at this point in time.
Yes, that's in the revenue section.
Okay.
So I think that, overall, big picture, that's worth mentioning too. The harbor has a lot of revenue associated with it, unlike a lot of our other departments. And the harbor revenue far exceeds our operational costs for running the harbor.
Ballpark what that difference is?
100,000, or is it about?
I was just gonna.
Close to 100,000.
It's around 100,000.
Thank you.
I'm kind of curious about the software that, what is it, the last item there. Evidently, in 19, you purchased $4,300 worth of software. So now you have that software. Now you have $5,000 to buy more software. Why?
So that's the license, that's the yearly licensing fee, and because, the issues that we were talking about with the side of it that does the billing, they've requested that licensing fee to be higher so that they can, the more complex billing system that we have, that they can try to work and figure that out. Like I said, I'm not entirely confident that we're going to get a good resolution from that, so we're sort of planning for a worst-case scenario where we need to figure out a different solution in terms of harbor software. But that's like a licensing fee that we'd pay year to year.
If the billing doesn't, side work, you still do the harbor software, the rest of it will be maintained?
I think we would go with something completely different because it's incredibly important for the, just the operations of the harbor, that the side that Steve's doing, which is sort of the management of moorings and the floats, that speaks to our billing system.
Are we locked in for, or is it month to month or year?
It's a yearly contract.
So you can get out after a year?
Yeah, and also because of all the problems we've had, I think that we've got quite a bit of recourse.
Yeah, we were one of the first harbors to actually ask a software to mesh the 400 or so moorings that I manage on. I have an old Dell, which I databased, and I have a box that says, Joe Smith, 28-foot boat. And whenever there's a change, because there's changes all the time, especially on Marlene's end, or now it's Liz Nauer's end, then I would have to go through her list, print it out, and say, oh, well, this is different, because my database couldn't talk to hers. Now it can. We're having some issues with how they're talking.
The pump out boat operations, is that, do we get reimbursed? We get paid for that service?
Yes, 90% reimbursement from the state.
State. The owners don't pay anything? It's just a service to the boat owners?
Correct. Yeah, it's a free service.
Just to get it done?
Yeah.
So the licensing, your software is going to be an annual fee that'll continue on in the future with some level, 5,000 or something. So that's just an annual fee that we'll see over.
Yeah.
Is some of these salary, is all of Steve's salary here, or is some of it up at the Snowball, in the Snowball?
His whole salary is in this line.
Okay, I wasn't sure that's.
And then when you'll see in the revenues, there is a receivable from the Snow Bowl to cover his other.
Thank you.
That was the same question, so.
A simple question on your radio budget of $200. Are you basically just using a VHF to just talk with the boat owners, or is that something that's compatible with the police department, the fire department, or that's a very low number?
Yeah, my office radio is a bigger, more expensive system with a big antenna. These are the handhelds. Every year we try to upgrade, and we have 6 of them. We try to at least buy one new one every year. Salt water kills those things pretty quick.
It looks like there's a lot of variability in the equipment maintenance line, 2020. Was fiscal year 19 just under budgeted, or how is that looking?
Well, basically, since there's still a chain, 5/8 chain that I use for the systems, sometimes I've got to buy a whole barrel of chain. It's cheaper to buy a whole barrel. So sometimes I get, not over budget, but sometimes it's a good whack, because that every 4 or 5 years I've got to buy a barrel, 2 barrels of chain, so it's kind of wishy-washy what that's going to be. Because a barrel of chain is $1,800.
Okay. And that's the difference between the department head and the town manager. That's the one difference that I can see.
Yeah.
So you're cut off.
I said Steve could have one less barrel.
Bottom chain?
No, it's actually top chain.
And Audra, is that difference because of what the actuals for this year are going to be, the 5,000 would be closer?
Yeah, I went and I kind of looked back at his actuals and averaged them out a bit.
No chain for this.
So any further questions on?
Yeah, one more maybe it's been answered, but under the department heads line, the equipment maintenance is 7,000, and under the town managers it's 5,000. So when you go to the bottom line, there's a $2,000 difference. I don't know, maybe I missed it, but did we touch on that?
Yeah, he's not going to get the second barrel of chain.
That was all about, okay.
So do we have a motion for either or?
I'll move we support the 2002, $50.
Second.
Second.
Did you second? Yeah.
All right.
All in favor?
All right, thank you.
Steve, now that you're on salary, are you still making minimum wage?
I still love my job. Thanks, have a good night.
Hey, you're staying for capital. No.
Okay, so we're going to recreation next, and that is Beth.
Yes.
Next page.
And Beth's going to do both recreation parks and cemeteries, is that right?
I think so. Want to explain the overall difference between recreation and parks budget?
We can, sure.
Yes.
So in recreation, which is page 30, here, this is pretty much programmatic stuff. It includes the summer camps out at the Snow Bowl. It also is Holly and my time for 6 months. The other 6 months is in the Snow Bowl budget. So this is all programmatic recreation base, whereas the next budget will be parks, which is all the grounds that we own in the town. So,
and there's some pretty significant changes. Bottom line, it's more or less the same for the town, but I think it's worth explaining how money's been kind of moved around, and it all comes down to the contract the town has with the Y to run summer recreation programs. So do you want to?
Sure. In the past, we used to bill them and they billed us, and we were just cutting checks back and forth. So this year, we are increasing the amount of kids, the ages of the kids, and busing of the children. So that's why these numbers look a little different under program wages. That 4,100 used to be one bus. This year we're going up to 4 buses. Also down at the bottom, the summer rec contract, we went from 35 to 23. So to send Camden resident kids to camp, we're going to be paying the Y less, but doing the bus wages for all the buses. Yes.
And on the
So does that mean there's an impact for the children that want to go, they'll be paying more?
We did go to the board, and they voted to do a tier pricing. It's going up a little bit for Camden residents. They were paying $50 a week basically since, I don't know, 05 maybe. Yeah. It went up to $450 at the lowest tier for all 6 weeks.
Went from $50 to $450 a week?
No, for all summer. It went from $300 to $450, so $75 a week. Yeah.
Do they have scholarships for those that cannot go?
Yes, we do through the town, yes.
But the Y probably does as well.
The Y does do have a sliding scale as well. But wouldn't be for Camden residents, that would be for non-residents.
So how did you get $10,000 less out of the Y? How did you do that?
So the idea is that if we pay more for the buses, that the town can hire the buses more cheaply than the Y can. So, it reduces the overall cost of the program if the town is the one that engages the school district to hire the buses. So we're increasing our contribution through hiring the buses, reducing the contract with them to provide the service, and our level of revenue that we receive from registration fees is also increasing because of having to, the program overall is more expensive because the minimum wage increases, so it's accounting for that. So the idea is that it's really a wash for the town between this year and last year. We're just moving around the way that we're able to work in partnership with the Y to provide the service.
41 include the gasoline too for the buses?
Yes. Yeah.
So real quickly then, the increase is 16,100, the decrease is 11,500. I think I'm doing fast math here. So you're looking at a 5K difference and you're saying the revenue increase is going to cover that 5,000.
I believe
Yes.
so, yeah.
We're pretty sure.
And we're pretty conservative with the revenue because another thing that we are doing differently this year is that it used to be flat, same fee for everybody. This is the price, this is it. This year we changed it, so there's going to be 3 different tiers that people can choose from. And
depending on what they can afford.
Right, and it's all self-selected, and I think most people are pretty honest, so I think that that's going to change the level of revenue that we end up collecting.
I'm not advocating for this, but is income versus expenses in that summer program for the kids sort of?
We've typically subsidized it since it began.
And we still are?
Yes.
Okay.
Do most kids do the whole summer?
That's what we try to get them to sign up for all 6 weeks. That's the most beneficial for them with the cost.
And what's the time? Is it like from 8 to 6?
It's 8 to 3:30, and they can do before and after camp, which will also be at the Snowball this year. So there's like one-stop shopping.
Great.
Yep.
How many Camden resident kids you normally get during the course of the summer?
Between 50 and 55, and the cap is 55.
What's the total camp?
We're looking at 100 in the Snowball camp, or up to 110 in the Snowball camp, which is Summer Rec and Campahoma combined. And then there's going to be an adventure camp, which is 11 to 13-year-olds. So we'll be able to offer those services to 13-year-olds, which we haven't with Summer Rec in the past. So
Are we turning people away where we have a cap?
Well, that was kind of just the number that we set for budgetary purposes,
Yes.
but we've got ways that we can. The Ys agreed that, they're going to accept more than that.
No,
Those always fill up, though. Am I not understanding that correctly? I'm turning away.
if we hit 55, will we tell them that they can't come, and we won't do that?
So if they tell you, if you try signing your kid up for camp and they're like, they're not going to stay on the phone anymore?
If it's a Camden resident, I think we'll find a way to get them in.
I just add one thing. I have a son who's 13, has been going to summer camps for a bunch of years, and it's a very difficult process. A lot of camps fill up. A lot of camps are very expensive, and for people that have kids in school and all of a sudden have to find ways to have them if they're working, this is the sort of the best resort for people that are having a tough time paying for it. It's a great program, and we worked a long time. The board had a lot of discussions about trying to keep the cost down for people that need the help, because this is a last resort for a lot of parents. It's a really important camp.
I just want to make clear, I wasn't advocating cutting them out. I was doing the opposite. I wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
I'm a little confused. The town is providing scholarships for the kids that can't afford Some can't?
It would be.
Not really a scholarship, we subsidize.
Subsidized, because I know the Y is providing the same type of situation.
That's correct.
For the kids to go to summer camp.
Yes, they are.
So it's a combination of the two.
It could be, yes.
Did you double dip?
Camden residents have to register with Holly and I at the Snow Bowl. We will be taking in the forms and we will be taking in the money. If they are not from Camden, they have to go through the Y.
If they're not from Camden. Okay.
Any other questions? I'm still not clear on.
I think it's the difference where I had budgeted 35, which is before we got this all figured out with the Y. And Audra's number is the correct number, the 23.5.
And so you're
Yep.
okay with
Absolutely.
the 162?
Yep.
So, if there's no further questions, do you have a motion?
I have a question.
Okay.
Grounds maintenance, $4,000.
Yep.
Is that where we have our field maintenance on?
Yep, that is just the maintenance, the playing field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Due to the discussions that we've had at the Park and Rec meetings, we've decided, or the committee voted to start charging the adult softball people.
Well, we have to go to the board with that. We haven't gone to the board with that, but yes, that's in the works.
Yes. That's been a pet peeve of mine for a number of years, in the fact that I was there when that league started, and to this date, they haven't paid anything for the use of the field every year. And a high percentage of that league is non-residents of this town. And I proposed at Parks and Rec that we start charging them for the use of the field. And it was approved. It does have to go before the selectmen. But because of that, I asked about the number that was coming in, where it would go in the budget. And it was said that we would put an additional $3,000 in the ground maintenance budget and add an additional $3,000 to the income line as well. And so I would like to propose that we add an additional $3,000 to the ground maintenance line.
Okay.
What would you do? What would you do with an additional $3,000?
Well, I'm not sure why, Mark, we want to put it in the expenses. If we're going to bring in 3,000 in revenue, it could be in a revenue line that we could
So
use.
it has to go towards something. And I want it to go to the ground maintenance, for the field maintenance.
So every other year, am I right, Tom? Every other year, we aerate and we, what is it to the softball diamond? Resurface the softball diamond every other year. We did it last year. So I wasn't budgeting for that for this year. But if we want to do it every year,
I know as that has to be done every year, but I know that the fields do take a beating at times, and I think it's necessary to put more into our fields.
And dugouts?
And dugouts, field, the whole.
I noticed that ground maintenance also includes the mountain bike trail.
That, yes, that any false, small fixes that we may need to do to those trails.
I just want to add that the Board of Selectmen voted back in August to carry forward a balance in that account from FY18 to this fiscal year. So right now, we have a balance of $6,100 in that. I don't know what you're planning on spending that on, if there's going to be anything that's left over that could be voted to be carried forward as well.
This past year, we had an instance where the football people brought in a shed and dragged it across the field, and there was some major damage done to the field. So we never know what's going to happen out there.
Do we have a reserve fund
For grounds?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No,
I don't think, there's open space reserve.
We just have like a general.
I think it is a general.
I got a couple.
You know I've been harping on this for 20 years.
Parks equipment reserve is $18,000.
Let's see.
I mean, surely we could always use more revenue, so is that what we want?
I've been harping on this for years, that people have been using our fields for free.
Right.
And I think it's time, where we put it in the budget as far as where it gets spent, I'd like to have it spent on the fields because they need it at times. But where it puts it doesn't matter. As long as we're going to get the income on the other end, which we should have been getting for the last 20 years and haven't been.
I mean, I think it's great to have the budget committee weigh in on whether to charge for that. It would be helpful, I think, maybe for the select board to hear for me to hear if the budget committee thinks that should be charged for. They agree with the recommendation.
What type of fee are you talking about in the teams?
I proposed approximately $15 for residents and $20 or $30 for non-residents. It breaks down to about 25 cents to 50 cents a game per person.
It's beer money, though.
What's that? Yeah, I mean,
beer
that's
money.
less than beer money. That's less than cigarette money.
You going to collect it as a team or as an individual?
My proposal is to collect it per team. You know, a minimum of X number of dollars per team, and then they can collect it from their team. But when we have teams that are 100% from Rockland or Thomaston playing on our fields and using our fields, and they're not contributing. I know some of the individuals are, but as a taxpayer in the town, I just kind of get a little tired of us providing stuff for free.
That's not at all unusual. I used to play in the Augusta and the China leagues, and we paid field fees.
Right. Every other league that I've seen in any other town, there was a fee for
I
it.
don't think that's unreasonable.
And for some reason, it got started. I was there when it got started. I remember playing in the league, and it was great and wonderful. And it still is. I support it, but I think it should be a fee for it.
Do you want us to act on this?
Whatever's necessary. I just thought that's the way to put it, and to also get it before people to think about.
Do we have to put it in as an expense? I mean, it's a revenue down the line for you guys to figure out where you want it.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if, I mean, like twofold, if Mark thinks that we need to put more money in for grounds maintenance, which it sounds like from both Beth and Jody, if you look at what we have for past years that we carried forward, we've got sufficient funds to do whatever needs to be done this year, so we wouldn't, I personally, I would not recommend that the committee puts any more money in that line in terms of expenses, but if Mark's real thing is, revenue from, fees to use the field, when we talk about
That's
the
big
revenue
part
side of it.
So the funds do become available for wherever it is needed out there.
Yes.
That's part of maintenance, grounds maintenance.
I mean, that is, since you brought it up, I mean, that was my question. Where do the tennis courts? Is that here? Is that the next page?
That's here, and we have a reserve for tennis court.
Okay.
Is it a reserve or it's a special account?
I think it's a restricted.
You gotta spend it.
Never spent it, have we, John? You just said, I wish it would be making money because we'd have enough to do the whole thing.
No, but it's a reserve, and there's almost 25,000.
And reserves right now for the courts? Okay.
For the tennis courts, but that's just,
Bucket.
yeah, to redo it appropriately, what we had it estimated, maybe 5 years ago was 90 grand.
35,000 for just the.
Surface, and then the fencing and all of that. And it's on wetlands.
I mean, as it is now, it improves your game when you go to a better court.
So, if I recall, the number for aerating that field was almost 11 grand one year. It was a substantial number one year.
That 1 year when we had all that damage, that fall.
That was like 5 or 10 years ago.
It was like a 10 grand bill.
Yeah, it was a huge bill.
But when we do it on every other year, I think it's like, it's 2,500 when they come and do it all.
And I've got to say this, this is coming. Mark, we're going to give away a farmer's market with people that come in that don't have Camden farmers in it.
Yeah, we also give
there you
away.
go. I had to say that.
We give away the.
Yes, I did.
The rowing club land as well.
There's a lot of it, but we all support the exercising, and that's what it is. I'd rather see these people exercising than sitting on a couch with a video game, and that and these kids. So that's what the Snowball Ragged Mountain facility is supposed to be for, to use it. And tennis was one of them too. I agree. It's been long. How many times have I brought that up over the last 20 years? We've never fixed it.
So, question, You had brought up that in China and Augusta, you pay a fee. Do you recall what that fee
I
is?
don't. I wanted to say per person, they just collected it. It was like maybe $5 or $10 a person.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot, and
That's what it amounts to.
yeah.
And the second question, Allison had made the suggestion, I guess this is a procedural question, it's do we, as a group, make a motion to vote for our inclination that there should be a fee?
Feedback, possibly.
I mean, I think that, you know, if you want to assign a revenue to this, and when we get to the revenue area, that kind of forces everyone's hand, because then we have to come up with that revenue stream. So I guess it depends on.
It seems like if we're going to vote on a revenue, though, we need the data in front of us before we put numbers to it, don't you think?
It'd also
I mean,
be
I
nice
agree with you. I
if
think
there was
it's
a
right, but-
policy undergirding the
Right.
revenue that we were going to collect.
That's why I said, was it a vote for the inclination or for the...
As long as the income
It's
gets-
gentler.
How do we nudge this?
How do you collect it?
I was told that
You
it
can
should
make
go
a
in one place.
recommendation.
Well, why don't we vote first on what's in front of us, which is a recreation budget, which I understand we're going with the town manager's recommended number of $162.50. Second. Well, we need a motion.
So moved.
So Robin's moving, and who's seconding?
Steve.
Steve? Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Okay, 100%. So now, does someone want to make an additional motion for the benefit of the select board to hear our collective opinion on potential for revenue?
Field use fees.
I mean, I have one more question to the China Augusta. I mean, do we know, are there fees currently charged in comparable areas nearby, like Belfast, Rockland,
Yes.
Rockport? So they are charging fees now?
Yes, there are communities around that are.
Okay, okay. So are we the last
No.
standout on this?
No.
Or, oh, yeah.
Does Little League or any of those?
So currently, our field users are Five-Town football in the fall. We have Penn Bay lacrosse in the spring, and we have adult co-ed softball, which is from many different areas. It's not Five-Town. Well, I guess it could be Five-Town adults, but it could be from anywhere.
Nobody pays.
No one pays. Softball historically would, whatever they had left in their till, they would donate, or they would paint, or they would try and maintain something or buy bases. But it was very small amounts.
Yeah, may I just add
Oh.
one thing as Chairman of the Parks and Rec Committee? We're looking at this as really being, as Beth suggested, calling it really a reservation fee or a booking fee, because once, like football, wants to use the sports field, nobody else can use it at that time.
Yeah, they're basically reserving
They're
for the
reserving
season,
field.
for the season that they play.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go out there and play with kites, you can't do it when they're using the field.
They get exclusive
They get
rights.
exclusive
So
rights to it.
it would be those users that we would be looking at this reservation fee.
So it has broader implications than
Yes.
just.
We currently already talk with the presidents of each of those leagues and book them to their season, but there's not any money changing hands currently.
Yeah, and I think that's also, there's going to be an issue with the middle school using those fields.
Yeah, the middle school lost one of their, or two of their playing fields, and the thought was that they could come out to us. They didn't need us last fall, so I'm not sure, but that snowball field is available to them if they need it before football or before lacrosse has it reserved.
Which is going to mean more use and more maintenance.
True.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anything about the schools, the little leagues, those things, that's not an issue. But my concern is the out-of-town people that are using it on a regular basis and for years have used it on a regular basis. And the idea of a booking fee, if you book out the whole year for like the softball league, it's a substantial figure, about $3,000. Now, if you look at it and say it's $1 a game for each person, it doesn't sound as bad. If you go to their league person and say, we want $3,000 this year, they're going to be in shock. But if we tell them we want $100 or $200 per team for the whole season. You figure out how you want to, somebody will have their sponsor pay for it, some teams will collect it from each person, you know, who knows? But we need to come up with some way of.
Are you looking at just non-residents or everybody, or the team is going to pay?
Ideally, it would be nice to say residents play for free and non-residents have to pay a fee, but when you get a team that has 10 or 15 people on it, then the bookkeeping would be a nightmare. So I don't want to put that on these people. They do too much work as it is.
I would like to say administratively, I'm not going to chase down teams and count how many are from Camden, how many aren't. I'm trying to simplify it, at least for now, and have it just be a reservation fee from each league that books it at on a regular basis.
You have a committee that's already doing that.
Yes, we do.
I would suggest that the committee that's already looking at it, not that I disagree with it, but like there's a
Collecting that
committee
fee
already
now?
doing it.
No. The last time, well, 2 meetings ago with the Parks and Rec Committee, we voted on it. We need to meet with these guys, get their approval. Then we will.
So I'm looking for a suggestion from the
I'll
board.
make a motion that the board recommend to the select board that for private reservations of playing fields that a fee be charged.
Leave it at that. Let them work it
That
out.
excludes your public, which would be your schools. And that seems to be your split. Some is private, some is
That's
public. And I don't think we're going to start, at this point, charging the schools for this because we'll just pay for it in the other end.
I'll second his motion.
All in favor? Sure. Anyone opposed?
No, it's all yours.
Thank you. So let's turn the page to parks.
Parks, we have 5 park employees and 1 custodian, and they're 7 months parks and 5 months snowball.
I don't have any of this.
32?
Nothing out of the ordinary?
Nope.
Any questions? Do you have a motion?
Is the mowing and the care of the Tannery Park in here?
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know.
You don't know.
It's underground, the grounds maintenance line. And that is basically what, Tom? Bush weed whacking?
There's that little spot of lawn that we mow with the farmer's market.
Yeah, picnic tables.
And then we just do the edge of the walking path. That's about it. We
So
let
John,
the trees-
John, that won't change until there's more grass.
Well, the reason we know what we charge the library, that it was like $7,500 a year. 65 now, what, 75?
No, it was 55
It
for
was
the.
higher than 65. Too nice.
I move the $262,890 for the parks budget.
Second.
Close enough.
All in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? I already voted on it, and it's fine, I agree. Can you just explain the restroom budget for the public landing? Looks like it's gone up quite a bit. Curious why that is.
Yeah, that is really,
Yeah.
the winter.
Yeah, so we do maintain those restrooms all year. Granted, this time of the year, it's maybe they spend an hour, maybe 2, opening and closing it. So when we were allocating monies this year, the full-time custodian and our part-time custodian were still getting charged to this account because this isn't snowball, and they have to clean it and supply it every day. So the public landing is open 7 days a week, even this time of year.
What are the hours of operation of it?
This time of year, I believe it's 9 to 5. In the summer, we go to much more. We're open much more down there. So
Could it be open
more. It's always so frustrating to go there and have them be locked.
Especially when you have to go.
Or a coin operator in the door.
Yeah, there you go.
And the door being open too in the summer is odd.
I think it gets hot.
Most just do they just stay open later?
I mean, we can look at that, but that means the custodian's coming in later, and that's a hard position
Couldn't
to
the police
fill.
department lock it up because when they walk out?
They, historically, I think they used to, but then it didn't get cleaned
Well, maybe
for the morning.
that's.
So
I've been in a union there.
Randy loves that.
That would be bad. Okay,
When it's dark out.
let's proceed on to dams.
Dance.
Damn.
I get to leave then.
Okay, cemeteries, dams was just the next page. but-
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm staying. No, I meant, okay, so we moved on to dance. I don't know what I mean. That's okay. Right, yeah.
Cemeteries are page 35.
Yeah, 35.
Well, where cemeteries is dams. Page of cemeteries.
35.
35. I don't have 35.
It's a tab here.
Tab. Oh, it's a new tab.
New tab.
That's 35. I think you got robbed.
His only wage increase is really,
The back and forth between the, or
you can,
explain the back and forth between the Cemetery Association and the town. History on that, but just generally how it works.
The association.
Pardon? What about it?
nothing, we were just talking, we said you probably know the history of the Cemetery Association in the town.
It goes back a long time ago.
Yeah, and
Not that old. Thank you, Beth.
I didn't bring my history on that. I wrote something up last year and never had to use it. So, so we're talking about the Cemetery Association. Okay, so a couple months ago, the Cemetery Association met to develop their budget for FY20. And so they are requesting from the town $46,400, which historically creates a $10,000 spread between what the town pays and what the Cemetery Association pays. So, and I believe that is what it was in this current year as well. So it goes back many years. John, I don't know if you have additional.
Well, I know there's, they have offset revenues that's pretty much,
Yeah,
it's
and
not far from a wash.
Yeah. And their revenues are just the opening and closing of graves, the sale of graves, perpetual care. They use some of their trust fund income to supplement the revenue or the expenses. And this year, they're proposing a carry forward from this year for next year to offset their expenses.
They've got graves that people had paid $5 back in the 20s and the 30s for perpetual care. That was it, $5 forever. You know, so they got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of stones that need to be cleaned up to Mountain Street, trees that need to be done. I think the railings need to be done again up there. I mean, they're constantly doing work up there. And they do a good job.
So for clarification on the revenues you just noted, that's not going to be in the town's revenues, that's in the association's books.
Yes, this is not part of the general fund, their actual operating budget, so.
So they operate, they maintain, and essentially this is the town, how should we say, subsidizing, supporting.
Contribution,
Okay.
yes.
Are there different cemeteries?
We have, yes, we have two cemeteries. We have Mountain View, which is over here
That's
on,
where the association
no, they oversee both.
Oh, okay.
And then we have Oak Hill, which is on Hosmer Pond Road.
What's the story with Seaview? Why is that one done by Rockport, but it's in Camden? That cemetery on.
but
Part of it.
part of it.
Part of it.
Yeah.
That happened many years ago, what they call it, gerrymandering, when they did something with the line. Wasn't that what they called it? When they moved it around.
But we don't have to do anything with that.
No.
That was the one by McGonagall House, is that in Camden? The one down the street on Rockport, is that in Rockport, on the right?
I think we should make a motion.
Yeah,
Unless there's more discussion.
yeah. Does anybody have any other cemetery questions? Somebody want to make a motion?
Move we accept, $46,400 from the Cemetery Association? And then 7,400 that the town manager recommends for the cemeteries. There's two different ones, I think. So I made two motions. Second of all.
So the first one
that's
is the
different.
association 46-4,
Yeah.
and the second one is the town manager's recommendation of 57.
Yes.
All in favor of both motions? Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Now we'll do some dams, which means going backwards to page 34. Does anybody have any questions for David? Page 34?
You're the dam man, huh?
That's right, yes. I'm the dam agent. Pretty straightforward here. The only thing that we have some money for some maintenance on the granite walls on Montgomery Dam. We're going to try to spend as little money as we can because we're not sure about possibility of a fist passage. We may want to just shore up the granite blocks so we don't lose too many.
Would you clarify which dam is which by name? I know where the dams are, but I get confused which name goes.
Certainly. So the Montgomery Dam is the one at the mouth of the river into the harbor. And what Dave was talking about here, the granite sluiceway wall, it kind of merges into the seawall. We have some granite blocks that are starting to fall out, so we're looking at doing the very minimal amount of repointing that we need to do to stabilize some of those granite blocks. Because I think that there's a bigger conversation that we all need to have about the seawall and what we do with Harbor Park into the future. But the situation is getting so dangerous down there with the blocks falling out that we need to do something in the interim period. Just to give you an example, we've had to tell Marine Patrol that the Elver fishermen can't affix their nets to that wall because we're afraid that if they do, it might cause them to, fall out, and we don't want anyone to get hurt. So, it's pretty in pretty poor condition right now.
And Seabright is beside Coastal Mountains. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to go through all of them?
That's why I was just trying to clarify which, I know the dams, I just can never remember which name is affixed to which one.
Right, and then the east and west are what we call the lake dams, so we share responsibility for maintenance of those with the town of Lincolnville. They pay about a third the cost.
So the improvements to Seabright are just a capital later in the budget?
So Seabright's the one that we did this year, and then we're going to talk about West Dam when we talk about capital improvements.
But I thought there was got to be more funding for Seabright.
No, we already
Well, I knew you,
already did that.
beyond the patch?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, that's about 75% done, John.
Yeah, that was in the FY19 budget
And
that
that
we're currently in.
included the door too, the gateway?
Yes. We're just waiting for the delivery of the gate, and then that's the other 25%.
And what about the gate on the Montgomery Dam? Is that being fixed or not?
We carried forward that money the last 2 years. We'll keep an eye on it, but the money's there. We have to move and fix that.
Is it operable at all now?
Yes. Yeah, it still is.
These guys have been under the water all winter at Seabright in their little warm suits with
Yes.
little, like, lunar helmets. It's amazing. I went over and had a chat. They're flushed with warm water while they're underwater. It's just frightening to even think about that.
Yeah,
We
they
hear
get
them
some,
all the time.
they get some nice equipment.
It's amazing, yeah.
So you don't have a suit to go down and inspect it?
I'd volunteer. Looks like fun to me.
Oh, my goodness.
Sandy?
If a fishway was in discussion, would it mean a fishway had to be on all the dams going to the lake?
Eventually, yes, for
Can
it to be
you do
effective.
one at a time?
Yeah, that's kind of the challenge that we're having in talking about a fish passage project up the river. So we've got, of course, the Montgomery Dam, which is the first dam. And then, Seabright, we just did significant work to. We're going to talk about the West Dam. And then we have the two private dams in the middle. So it's a big project, and I think that it can be done, but it's all a matter of timing and coordination and trying to find opportunities when we can to, make sure that when we do work on a dam, we're also looking at opportunities for fish passage and not precluding it.
Any other questions?
So the line items here, the 2050, 2051, and 2053, aren't matching up, the sums aren't matching up with the detail below. So when we vote, are we voting on the top line, and how does that tie to what's below in each of the detailed line items?
Oh, sorry. The reason that they don't match up is because Dave went through and for each of them, he put in his stipend and the FICA and Medicare. And so when we were putting the budget together, we pulled out the stipend, FICA, and Medicare and put it all in that one line.
Oh, okay.
So 30,736 is still a good number.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept that number as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Great. Well done.
Okay.
So now we're going on to debt service.
All right. So,
Page 37? Is that where
yes.
we started?
Yep. So debt service, we sort of touched on this when we did the introductory workshop. And one thing I always like to keep referring back to is these spreadsheets that have sort of the overall level of indebtedness of the town. Just to give everybody, and apologies that the graphs are hard to read, they're kind of cut off. But this is something that we always try to keep in mind when we're doing capital planning, because there's an impact to bonding projects, and that's, our indebtedness changes in future years. And so our goal is always to try and keep the debt as level as possible. To some extent, that's not going to be possible for us to do given the scope of repairs with projects like the wastewater treatment plant. But in regards to a lot of our other sort of year-to-year capital projects, that's certainly something that we can control and keep an eye on. So, really, this principal and interest line in the budget, we don't have a lot of control over this year, but I think it's really important to look at in the broader picture of, what are we spending on capital projects and how is this going to impact that bottom line from year to year. So we do have some significant debt falling off in future years, but it's not next year. It'll be a few years down the line. So really the difference this year that we're looking at would be the streetlight money, and as we talked about before, that's just being moved from the streetlight budget to this area to help with that conversion project. So that's one of the big changes this year. We do have a few bonds from prior year projects that are coming on board now. I think a good example of that would be like the general obligation bond for the Seabright Dam, as well as the work that's being done on eventually the Mechanic Street parking lot, the Bayview Street drainage project. But when we're looking at the capital improvement projects that we want to do, one thing that we're looking at this year is not bonding some of the projects that we have, and instead looking at self-financing, because we know that we don't have a lot of debt falling off next year. So I think that looking at a different way of financing some of our capital projects is going to be important for overall keeping our debt at a reasonable level, so that we're not seeing any spike in taxes over the long haul. So does anybody have any questions about debt and our overall level?
As you look at, I'm assuming your little spreadsheet on your computer goes out several years beyond this.
Yes.
So having our conversation earlier about the library, are you incorporating that out here somewhere off our margins so that we know as things are coming off, we know other things that are probably coming on?
So, I mean, that all depends on overall what our priorities are. So I mean, I have two different spreadsheets. One, what's our current debt, and then the other is you'll see it under the capital improvement projects. What's the big scope of everything that we have across town that we know that we need to do?
You mean this fold-out spreadsheet? I thought we had started by also putting in things that weren't necessarily decided, but more things that we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
But not necessarily.
Yeah, as well, I'd say.
And is that in here, or that's?
That's under the capital improvements. You'll see that bigger spreadsheet of sort of
After
we know we need
page
to.
42, Robin.
Yeah.
So Audrey, you said you'd like to keep a certain level of debt. What is that target level?
So right now,
Do you want to the library?
what the debt in this is it?
Which one? This one.
The library's on this first one.
This page here?
The library is on the first.
Sorry, Carla, we're looking up the exact numbers.
So for bond,
Should be in the schedule.
According to this, if I'm reading it correctly, our debt obligation for the library has ended for this
okay,
year.
so it's 4.3 million for bond debt.
Right, so that's now
I'm
gone.
sorry, we didn't hear that.
We have, right now, our outstanding debt is 4.3 million, and our short-term debt is a little over 400,000, which is leases and loans and whatnot.
And that's where you want to be going forward?
I mean, realistically, we're not going to be able to stay under that because of the wastewater treatment plant project, because, that's almost a $14 million project. So that's going to impact it significantly. But I think that when you look at everything else on balance, I think we want to make sure that we're not exceeding that baseline 4.3 million that we have now.
Where is our indebtedness right now?
4.3.
And where is it on these papers here?
Right here.
At the bottom in blue.
Look at it, right there.
Oh, okay, there, okay.
So Audra, where is going to get the money to do the self-financing?
So that would come from the use of surplus.
How do you go to get into that?
Yes. Yeah. So the idea would be, and we can talk about this a little bit later when we get to the capital projects. The idea would be, we would be basically self-financing some of our major capital projects. So we would use surplus to pay for the upfront cost, and then on a year-to-year basis, we would pay back our surplus.
That was something we did probably 10 years ago, and it worked fine. We didn't use surplus, we used reserves. We had substantial reserves at one time. But since now the projects have been done, the reserves are gone, but it did work out well. Saved a lot of money.
Speaking of reserves, what do we have for reserves at the moment?
We've got a lot of reserves.
None?
Did you want all of our reserve balances?
Well, is it?
You're talking about undesignated balance or reserve?
There's a lot of reserves set up for different projects,
Yeah, we have-
so it is as detailed as
There
what
is
you're.
no one reserve account.
No, we have about 30
Okay.
of them.
Well, don't need that right now.
Do we have any more discussion on the capital contingency? I like to hear both the department head and the town manager.
Well, I could argue with what Jody puts, but I wouldn't dare.
Any more specific questions to the total of $613,489? Do we have a motion to accept?
I mean, it's a debt we owe, we gotta pay it.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
And the next page is just the interest, and this is just, best practice in terms of accounting, separating out our principal payment from our interest so everybody can see, what we're paying on each.
I move $142,506 in interest. Right?
Yep.
All in favor? Moving right along.
Write this down.
Is that next?
Yes. All right, so capital reserves, just to sort of go down through the list where there's been any significant changes. So I'm proposing that with accrued benefits, we reduce that from last year. We've been able to build that up, so I'm pretty confident that, that line, our current balance in that is sufficient for anything that would happen this year that we might need it for. Opera House maintenance, I'm proposing that we don't put any in that reserve, and we'll talk about that a little later. We're proposing to do a pretty significant capital improvement project on the building, and we'll go in great detail about that, I'm certain. For the IT reserves, we really do not need to add any additional funding to that line. We still have some funding available from the money allocated last year to do some IT upgrades, so we're covered for anything that could possibly happen in terms of IT. Energy conservation, so this is money that we haven't added a lot to this reserve account in the past few years, and the idea behind it is that we would be saving up money to do some projects that would help with energy conservation across the town. It could be, a building project.
I'm sorry, is in our book somewhere the total amounts of the reserve funds, the total balances now? It's not in our book?
We don't have that, sorry, or we didn't, I don't believe.
It's not in there, but I can tell you whatever you want to know.
It would just help put it in context that's all.
Because it may change between when this goes to print and because we may have spent out of it. So I have the up-to-date balances if there's any questions.
Sorry, I mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. The fire truck reserve, that's really a maintenance line. So the idea behind that is with our current fleet, we're putting away some money so that we're able to do major repairs when it's necessary. For the parking line, we haven't put away any money into the parking account in a long time, and this is for maintenance and upkeep of parking lots that the town owns. We have a number down at the public safety area. Now we're going to have the lots up in Knox Mill and Knowlton Street, though a lot of maintenance that we need to do for those lots is covered by the previous budget that we looked at. The $10,000 for public works facility improvements. There's some pretty significant work that's going to need to be done on those buildings in the future, and I think that it's prudent to start putting away money for that. Some of the the sand and salt shed, it's in good enough condition to continue on for the next few years, but at some point, and I'm hoping it's no point in the near future, but it could be 10 years from now, it could be 5 years from now, we'll need to look at the sand and salt shed building a little bit more, and some like the garage as well as the paved areas. Do you have a question?
So the sand and salt shed has been deemed structurally sound?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, there was an issue.
I remember when they said, like, at the budget committee a few years ago, it all had to be torn down.
Right.
Yeah, I think that
$300,000.
that's kind of extreme, but it's something that we certainly need to keep an eye out for, and I think
Well,
we
I'm
need to
glad to see
plan.
that, because I didn't think a 20-year-old building should come down.
No,
Yeah.
no, that'd be pretty upsetting for everyone, I think. Streets and sidewalks, so that's a fund that we're gradually trying to build up if we want to do any projects. It could be matched for a grant. There's a lot of things that money could go towards, but I think that, given the condition of the roads this year, that's kind of the pool of money that we would look to if we're finding that, Rick's operational budget to do some of the repairs isn't sufficient. The Washington Street sidewalk project, so this is a grant from DOT that we are supposed to match to about 20%. Now, that project, I think it was started about 8 years ago is when the original grant was awarded. And as time has gone by and that project has evolved and the planning has changed, the price of the project has changed as well. We put additional funds aside, I think it was last financial year, but there's additional, it's looking like with the construction prices as they are, that project's going to need additional allocation from the town to meet our 20% match with the state. So that's why I've included the additional $20,000. For parks and open space, this is a pool of money that we set aside if there's any, maintenance or projects that we want to do on any town-owned parks. For the Snow Bowl, this is something we started doing again last year after a couple of years of not setting this money aside. It's really, if there's any issues with the Snow Bowl, the town's able to, help allocate money towards the, it could be operations, it could be if there's a piece of equipment that breaks or, any unforeseen at the Snow Bowl that, causes an issue with their operational budget. This would be, money that the town's setting aside to help with those unforeseen circumstances. The $40,000 allocation for dams, we've kind of allowed some of those reserves to dwindle because we did have some major projects, but I think it's important that we start allocating more money into those reserve accounts because given the age that they are and the condition that some of them are in, we're finding all the time that, there's maintenance that goes above and beyond what we allocate in the operational budget. And I just think it's really important to have this on hand in case there's, an emergency and we need to look at doing something quickly. The harbor dredging, that's a project that we do, I believe is it 10 years, Steve? Yeah, every 10 years. So this is just setting money aside so that when we come to, our 10-year maintenance dredge, we have that funding available and we're not taking the hit in 1 year to pay for the dredging. Harbor projects, there's a number of floats that we need to replace over the years as they sort of degrade and get to a point where they're at the end of their usable life. In addition to that, when the town passed the ordinance banning unencapsulated polystyrene, that applies to the town as well. And we have a few floats that, they have unencapsulated polystyrene at the bottom of them. So we need to start planning to replace them.
On that one, there is a major difference in what the department had asked for and what you're recommending.
Yes. So Steve kind of looked at the scope of all of the projects that he had and, if he were to set a certain amount of money aside every year to pay for them, what that would need to be. And it was about $64,000. And I just thought, that's quite a significant amount of money. So I thought 20 was, a more realistic figure given some of the other, reserve accounts that we want to also allocate funds towards.
What does that omit? So what?
Oh, he's got a whole capital improvement list for all the different floats and the bottom chain replacement and is there anything?
A whole lot more than a barrel of chain.
But it was kind of extravagant, just wish list, or?
Oh, no, it wasn't extravagant. I think it all needs to be done eventually, but it's just.
Yeah, this has to do with the fact that if we're going to, because the last time we did money for the finger floats, we just got a bond out because it needed to be redone. So I don't know, that's a decision that you have to make. You want to save our money, have it there, and sitting ready to run to take a bond when a big ticket item comes up once in a while.
So the difference is you're just spreading the amount out further and
Yeah.
lumped into 1 year.
Yeah.
But you guys agree on the.
Oh, so this was just for 1 year, right? You're just
Yeah.
spreading it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's harbor projects. The public landings, so we've been putting money away for the eventual redevelopment of the public landing. That project, just as an update to everyone here, we did put $35,000 aside for engineering work on the public landing in the FY19 budget. And I think we actually talked about that before, how we've been included as part of a state study that's going to cover a lot of the work that was going to be done there. But this project, we do have a few years to plan for it and to save for it as well, because, you know, the state's going to take a while to finish their study. There's going to be some further work that we need to do in terms of planning before we need to really start looking at what we want to do down there and what the cost is going to be to the infrastructure improvements. The Riverwalk, so this is just setting some funds aside for construction of the Riverwalk, as well as matching grants. A lot of that project so far has been funded through grants that the committee has received, or, you know, volunteer work. So the idea behind this was that we would start setting some money aside in a reserve account. So if a grant opportunity becomes available, we have a little bit of matching funds to be able to go for those grants. The $20,000 for bridges, we have the two bridges on Molyneux Road. They're not at a place now where we need to seriously consider doing, you know, major replacement of those bridges. We did some major repairs on them not too long ago, but unfortunately, those repairs didn't work to the level that we were hoping that they would.
You talking the fish hatchery, in front of the fish hatchery?
Yes.
Yeah, we put a new deck on that about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Well, I mean, it didn't solve the problem. We've been told that eventually we're going to have to look at replacing them. So we're just trying to build up this reserve so we're not taking a big hit all at once when they eventually do need to be replaced. The tree conservation, that is namely for the emerald ash borer, and setting some funds aside so that the town is a bit prepared to respond to that when it gets to a point where we need to be proactive about, you know, taking trees down or saving certain trees. And the big ticket item is the $100,000 for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So my thought with this is twofold. So one, it's sort of preparing for that eventual impact that we're going to have from the debt service on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. So we're looking at about, you know, $500,000, and this depends a lot on what portion of this project ends up being grant funded. We're still working with the USDA to underwrite that grant loan program that we've applied for to do the upgrades to the treatment plant. So we're not exactly sure, you know, what proportion of that project is going to be grant funded, what proportion of that project is going to be a loan. We're also talking about entering into a recapture agreement with the wastewater treatment plant. So it isn't just the taxpayers that are paying for the full cost of the upgrades. It's also ratepayers as well. It's shared between the two. And that might be really important for getting grant funding to do the project.
So you're going to do an ordinance change to change the funding?
No, we wouldn't need to do an ordinance change because it would be a recapture agreement between the voters would have to vote on it, of course.
Right, because debt service has always been town.
Right, but it would be an agreement that the town pays the debt service and then the wastewater treatment plant reimburses the town for that.
So they're looking to start construction this year?
No.
No.
No, we've got probably about 18 months of engineering work still ahead of us.
Yes.
Before we get to that point. And we don't.
2 years of construction after that.
Yeah, 2 years of construction after that, and we don't need to pay on the loan until the project is completed. So we're looking at, I'd say, 4 years before we're paying on that loan. So I think that by putting a significant amount of money aside, we're, one, preparing ourselves for that eventual inevitable hit, as well as building up a reserve that we can help buffer the impact of that on taxpayers when it actually does come online. So it's not this one hit in 1 year. We're gradually kind of amping that up.
When you say we don't have to pay on the loan until the project is complete, is this something where we're being billed interest on it all that time?
So it all gets sort of bundled in together at the end. So yes,
Okay, because
yeah, eventually we will be
my
paying
thought
all that
is,
interest.
sometimes if you pay as you go, you'll save a lot in interest.
We can't really do that because it's a federal program, so it's set up a certain way.
Is any of this offset by increased rates?
That would be the recapture agreement. So unfortunately, the way that our charter's written, taxpayers pay the full amount for any capital improvements that are made made to the plant or the collection system as well. So and with the USDA grant, the way that it works, you only get grant money if you're showing an impact on ratepayers. So that's why we're looking at a recapture agreement being a potential way to, reduce the overall cost to the town. But all that is going to come down to the underwriting that the USDA is doing now on our grant loan and us figuring out the best way to make it work. So we're reducing our overall cost. And the last one, the river habitat restoration. So we talked a little bit about the fish passage project and, looking at some of our dams and possible removal of a few of them. And this money is really we're setting aside potential match to a grant because there's a lot of different grant programs that the town could tap into to do some of these projects, but we need to have matching funds available to do them. So that was the idea of putting some of this money aside.
Out of curiosity, this fish ladder thing that's being talked about, what are we hoping, or what is being hoped to replenish from a fish stock perspective by having a fish ladder?
So we've been alewives.
Be a primary one.
Okay.
Blueback herring, I think, or another one.
Is anybody, are you even at the point of looking at the cost versus what the potential return of the alewives are going to be?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'd say we're still looking at.
When they blew up the VZ Dam and said they were opening up 2 million acres of development or fish replenishment for salmon and alewives on the Penobscot River, and that's 10 years ago, I've yet to ever hear that really happen. So
It's been a phenomenal success.
it has?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we keep reading about in the Gulf of Maine how salmon and alewives are disappearing. And that was supposed to massively increase the biomass going into the bay.
It's been really successful. Salmon is what they found is that salmon unfortunately do continue to diminish, but and they're very near to being listed on the Endangered Species Act. But what they're finding is that by replenishing the populations of a lot of the other sea-run fish, that also impacts the salmon. So, it's a huge source of tourism. If you go down to Damascotta Mills for their alewife festival, it's amazing. People go out there to the middle of nowhere.
But that's a fish ladder that's been in place for 150 years or better. So
Well, they just recently restored it because it wasn't.
I understand. Yeah, they kept the birds out too. But point I'm making is that fish ladder's been there, so that ecosystem was never diminished in many respects. And so what I'm kind of curious about is, what is the thought that Lake Naguntacook and Norton Pond are going to replenish? This is more me digging. I'm just curious. What is this biomass impact that those two lakes are going to put back into the system?
It's also the stream habitat. So you have Naguntacook River, which historically had native populations of wild brook trout. So as the water gets warmer, it becomes less possible for them to survive. You even have, the state runs spawning, or the state run hatchery program. So they put in all these trout every year, and a good amount of them die because they don't have access to spawning habitat. What they need to spawn is gravel. So because of all of our dams, and this happens in a lot of places, they can't get to like the little brooks, or a lot of times it's just culverts. So they put them in the lake or in the river, and then they can't get to the places where they could lay their eggs. So they just have to be replenished year after year. If you want to look at the impact of it, you can look at, there are a lot of ways to approach it, whether it's the environmental impact on an ocean level, or you want to look at the economic impact to the communities where this happens. But you do see a lot of places where fish haven't, it's been 200 years since fish have been able to go up and spawn in their native spawning habitat, and as soon as you take the dams out or provide passage, they really do start coming back. You can actually see them in the springtime here trying to get up. It's kind of remarkable that they're still doing that.
I make a motion, we accept the town manager's recommendation of $348,500.
Can I interrupt just a second? I just remember a conversation about the tree conservation.
Yes, thank
In
you.
that conversation, they talked about upping the budget on that because of the emerald ash borer. And that hasn't been.
I have a yellow.
Okay, good.
Add 10,000.
So 15.
I'll second the motion.
Are we amending it first? Because there was that previous discussion.
It's at 5 right now, and I think the prior discussion
About
was
15.
We had
adding
taken
10 to it. Mhm.
Yeah, we had taken 10 out
So-
over here and put it over, okay.
Did we ever really ascertain that that
358?
was super necessary? There was conversation that the emerald ash borer isn't here yet. We're putting 5,000 in. What was the cost going to be? And I think it was still in a conversation phase.
Actually, what's happened in the emerald ash borer now has been found in 3 places in Maine. It was just found in York as the latest one just a couple weeks ago, and they found larvae. So it's aptly established now in Maine, not just in a couple isolated places. So it's coming much faster than when we originally started to look at the cost of treating the ash trees in town. We estimated at $250,000. So that's what we're getting prepared for.
So we've got a motion for now, 358,500? Do we have a second?
348.
No, we've added the 10, right?
Well, I thought that's what the conversation
I
was
think- I
last
think-
week.
Yeah, you can make a vote on the motion that's pending and see if anybody wants to support that. If they don't, then you can make another motion on a higher amount.
Because that's what your motion was, right, 348?
348.
I thought so.
And what are you talking about adding to?
10,000 to the tree conservation, which was discussed, 2 weeks ago?
Last week, it was
Last
taken
week.
out of
So
the
do
tree
we have a
program
second on
last week.
348,500?
Yes, mark it.
Sorry, okay, all in favor?
No,
Well,
Okay.
you want to put in that 10,000 so somebody has to amend the motion.
let's make another motion. Make another motion.
Steve, are you making a motion for?
I'll make a motion to amend by increasing the amount by $10,000.
Okay. Second?
358,500.
Any opposed? One opposed? Yeah. Okay. This is, we just upped it by 10. I think we were actually trying to up it by 5, which made that $5,000, $10,000.
Goes 10 now.
I had in my notes stuff.
To 10,000.
It is.
Yeah, it's 15 total.
now.
It was changing to 5
Yeah.
to 10.
No, it's changing to
That's
15.
my notes
Now
are
15.
from 5 to 15.
Close enough.
All these zeros.
Capital improvements?
Or less. We're spending that.
Here we go. Take it away.
The next one?
We're on page 41, capital improvements.
Capital improvements. All right, so in your budget book, I've included sort of the master spreadsheet that we have that it really sort of contains really almost everything that we can think of as projects that we know are on the radar, things that are urgent, things that are desirable, pretty much anything that anyone has thrown out as something that we need to be looking at is included on this list. It's not necessarily perfect. There might be some things that are left off. And there are things that are fought over as to whether or not they're, a priority or not. So, when we go through and we create sort of the capital plan that we're going to be following for the year, we're looking at this list and trying to prioritize what's on the list and also balance that, going back to sort of the level of indebtedness in the town, figuring out, what are we able to spend this year and what's sort of tolerable from a budgetary perspective. So that sort of brings us to the capital plan for this year. So we talked with Randy about the police cruiser. So that's proposed, and the $45,000 would account for the hybrid cruiser. We have some capital equipment that's been requested by the Public Works Director. So it's a sander for the dump truck, as well as other assorted equipment. A lot of it's attachments for, our loaders. The Route 1 sidewalk crosswalk project, that's additional funding for that project that we had allocated funding for and approved a couple of years ago. A lot of you probably heard that project, when it was bid out by MDOT, it came in about $400,000 over budget. So the plan is to rebid it, but we're also being practical about it's inevitable that project is going to be much more expensive than it was originally planned to be. DOT's committed to still funding that project at 80% if Camden is still willing to pay the 12.4% and Rockport's still willing to pay I think it's 7.6% of their share. So this would really look at a project that's, in about the $700,000 range. We don't know exactly, what the bids are going to come back at for this project because it needs to be rebid.
When does that go? When does it happen, or potentially?
So I'm thinking that probably in the fall it'll be rebid.
Rebid. Oh, it's been.
Yes.
When does it actually happen? Or
I think the hope would be that if it's rebid in the fall, the work could be done in the spring or summer of 2020.
There's still money funded from DOT then to
Oh, yeah.
do the project?
Yep, they're still willing to do it if we're still willing to allocate our, 20% total match to the project.
And the 20% is 700,000.
No.
The overall project.
Our 20% would be, sorry, I'd have to look at it. So Camden's share would be about 105,000, and Rockport's share would be 7. I don't know. I've done that. Yeah.
I just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be total about a $700,000 project.
And so right now you have 75 plus 7. No, sorry. So
Just
you
the
have-
35 for this year. We've already got
you've already
70
got that.
sitting.
So that would cover the difference.
Yep, that would cover the difference. So the next part, Opera House Auditorium and the third floor. So we're getting to a point where the lighting system in the Opera House we need some major upgrades to it. Dave Morrison is here to speak a little bit more about that. And I've got most of the department heads that have capital projects. So, after we go through kind of everything that's been proposed for this year, if you have questions, we can get into the details with them.
So what happened to the roof?
That's coming.
That's coming?
That's coming up. The assessing software upgrade, this would be, a new version of Vision, which we use to do the assessing for, all the data for assessing throughout the entire town. The RMRA, the access road to the Snow Bowl. So we've recently been awarded a grant by Maine DEP for $95,000 to fix the access road. And this $65,000 would be our match to that grant that would allow us to fix a culvert that's been a problem for years, completely redo the road base going in, and hopefully pave that as well. And I think anybody who's been out to the Snow Bowl this year knows that it is, your teeth
Keep speed down.
could fall out of your head, so.
There are natural speed bumps, that's a good point, yeah.
That's true. So the seawall river restoration, I think we talked about this briefly before. The seawall kind of that goes into Harbor Park, it's in really bad condition, and it's at a point where it's starting to erode. We need to think about what we want to do with it long-term. We don't really have, we know that if we were just to replace it as is, it would be about $75,000. I think we should look at a more long-term solution and something that's going to be a bit more resilient to overtopping and erosion and, you know, the more extreme weather and the higher tides that we're seeing. But we don't have the engineering done on that. But I think putting aside some money and thinking about this in terms of that broader project that we were talking about with the, you know, the fish passage and how that area of the park all fits together is important. So I wanted to, you know, look at allocating some funding towards that. The harbor float replacement, Steve can talk to you in more detail about that project, but a lot of it comes down to, you know, the unencapsulated polystyrene and having to replace that, as well as some sections of the floats that are in really bad shape in terms of the decking on them. The Opera House building repairs, we're having really bad water intrusion issues in the Opera House. Poor Dave Morrison is often doing work during a rainstorm, and he's just got like garbage cans all over the place collecting water that's falling in through the ceiling. And we've done a lot of work to try and figure out exactly what the cause of that is, but unfortunately there's no smoking gun as to what that is. So we're just looking at the most likely culprits and trying to fix those problems. And we can talk about that a little bit more in detail as well. The West Dam repairs, this is a very unfortunate project. None of us wanted to do another major dam repair this close after we did the Seabright work, but unfortunately the gate on the West Dam is failing, so we really don't have much of a choice in terms of fixing that gate. There's some I-beams also that while the equipment is in there fixing the gate, it was more cost effective to look at fixing the beams as well.
Is that our share, or is that just a total repair?
That's the total repair, so the idea is that Lincolnville would be paying a third of that cost. So some reimbursement for that.
Is Hope paying anything towards, they've been requested and they declined, or?
We've never requested for Hope to pay any share of the Naguntacook Lake dams.
They have some frontage, right? They've got Bishopwood and...
Yeah, they do.
Is there a reason that has not happened?
I really don't know. I'm guessing it's a sort of historic.
Well, look at me, it goes a long, long time. Way back.
Back and forth.
Back forward.
Would it hurt to ask?
Yeah.
It's true, we could certainly ask.
Could ask.
So the Pearl Street Drainage Sidewalk Road Repair Project, that would be from Park Street to John Street, that segment of Pearl Street. Rick Seibel he's here to talk in more detail about that.
And the people that live on the street, they'll pay for it, right?
Just that. Just that. Special assessment.
Any vehicle I own.
And then the public safety building HVAC repairs, really the HVAC system in that building hasn't worked for quite a long time, and we've been grappling with what's the best thing to do with that building. How do we fix that system? And it's really a much more expensive fix than the $30,000 that we have in the budget, but the idea was we'd kind of start doing something this year, and then next year we'd do more of that repair. And of course the library HVAC repairs we talked about, but sorry.
No, just what you're talking about, the two of them, HVAC is the same word. Is there some way that they can be talked about with the same vendor or bids, or
we could
something, combine them in some way?
I mean, we could certainly try. It's kind of different. The scope of repair is
But
different.
it might be the same types of companies that are bidding on it.
Mechanical engineering.
So,
Yeah.
So, If I may, so say you get your wish list here and everything goes, how much of it are you looking to self-finance? How much you looking to bond? How much you looking to include in their regular budgets?
So it would really be the West Dam repairs and the Pearl Street drainage project. Those would be the ones that we would look at self-financing. So that's where we're proposing to take money from the surplus to pay for those projects, and then we would pay ourselves back over a 10-year period.
$650,000?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the engineering, wasn't that done a few years back, Rick, for Pearl Street, the drainage problem? We looked at that probably 10 or 15 years ago, because they had the problem with the Congo, down by the Congo Church. And there was that ditch out back there all the way down from
Oh,
Park
this
Street.
doesn't have anything to do with that. This is just out in the street.
This is the street?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from Park Street to John.
That's where he lives.
Yeah.
About that.
So yeah, to go through kind of the offsets for some of these projects that's included in the revenues. So for the Route 1 South pedestrian project, we've got about $20,000 in a TIF reserve that I'm proposing we use to allocate towards that project. And then we have another $15,000 in the highway TIF. So that combined would be our share of the additional funding for the Route 1 South pedestrian project. We have about $50,000 in Opera House. Well, we've got more than $50,000, but I'm proposing we take $50,000 out of the Opera House reserves to offset some of the cost of those those improvements that need to be made and the maintenance that needs to be done. And for the assessing software upgrade that we need to do with Vision, I'm proposing we take $18,000 out of our IT reserve to pay for that. So if you look at our reserves and what we'd be withdrawing from that, would be $88,000.
Then that's all in the green sheet up in the
thank you.
Second tab.
Oh, sorry,
Right.
everyone.
Trying to find it.
The last green sheet.
I mean, that library, I mean, the
In the beginning
roof of
of
this
your
building certainly should be a priority, because, I mean, if we let it go too long, we'll probably talk about mold problems and everything else. I mean, this is something that we talked about for a little while now.
Yeah.
I thought that they were looking at the gutters. Is that not the problem now?
It is. So do you want Dave to talk about the whole scope of the Opera House building?
I want to make a motion that we accept the department head number of $1,221,100.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay.
You're putting,
Sorry, is there any questions?
I don't know. So if you had any
Is
questions.
there going to be no conversation?
Discussion after a motion.
you can make the motion and have discussion.
But you should have the discussions after the
Well,
vote.
we can have some discussion.
Question before the discussion here.
Well, somebody got a second Ed's motion? No.
Well, I think we have a motion made and seconded, and now
Discussion.
Okay.
I don't even know. I mean, we have department heads here. There's questions. I have a question about the library HVAC repairs, which we've zeroed out down here. I'm sure there's other questions about what some of these are. On the Opera House, my question is, are we also keeping up with technology for, is that, I don't know. I feel like we need a little more discussion.
Yeah, so we have
Ed's motion
everyone.
was the department head budget line, not the.
What?
But included the library.
Do you want to start at the top, go down the list, and who we want to talk to?
Am I the only one that has
No?
questions?
I know.
What I don't understand here is if the library is a building that's owned by the town, then why isn't the town have oversight over what's happening there? Whatever repairs need to be, why isn't that an ongoing process? If it's our building, we ought to be taking care of our building, not waiting till somebody else comes and tells you.
Bylaws, that's the way the whole thing is set up. We don't have oversight over.
See, it's gifted that way when the family's originally.
Really?
Yeah.
So you have a building that you can't have Rick go over there and take a look and determine what the needs of that building are? Wow, that's.
But I would certainly suggest if we were going to fund this through town money, that it should go through the town's RFP, the town's bidding process and all of that, because we're using town money to make sure that it's all done the same way anything else is done with the town's capital plans.
Yeah, and I mean, I have spoken with Nikki about this, and they are open to working with us more closely on all of this.
And if I can add, that doesn't mean that we couldn't have, we currently do have a select board liaison, so, we can certainly add to those discussions and make sure, and as I mentioned when I was presenting earlier, we have presented to the select board 2, if not possibly even 3 times in the last 12 to 15 months to talk about the building. But I agree that everybody needs to be on the same page. It is a town-owned property, and discussions and so forth in the regular process needs to take place.
So, what are you suggesting? Because you're suggesting not funding that, or at least not putting it in the capital improvements.
I mean, I think that, this is why it's good to have input from the budget committee, because I guess when I talked about the scope of capital improvements that we had to look at across the town with the select board, we were sort of looking at the library has HVAC issues, public safety building has HVAC issues, that the HVAC system in the public safety building has actually failed. Like, it's not working now. We've got air conditioners sitting in, the windows of most of the offices in that building, so it's bearable to work in there in the summer. And, I think that they bring in heaters sometimes in the winter, so it's just, the system isn't working, it's very energy inefficient, it's expensive. So when we were looking at sort of what's the bigger priority, I think the select board was saying, okay, well, the library system hasn't failed yet, and then we have another building where that system actually has failed, and we need to do something about it. And I think for them, they were looking at the overall scope of priorities across the town and what we had in front of us, and just trying to prioritize so that we're bringing, our numbers down to a reasonable level. There's a lot of projects that we could have put on the list that don't even make it on. So I think that by putting it on the list, we wanted to draw it to everyone's attention that, this is something that the library has told us is a need, but also we wanted to highlight that, there are other buildings in town that have similar needs as well.
Can I add to that? Just to make it fair for Audra, the select board had a workshop to talk about these projects, and I am the biggest proponent of the library. I'm a huge library fan, and I really feel strongly about that. It's a town building. We need to take care of it, especially because the stock of their paper is in serious jeopardy if it goes wrong. I was not at the workshop where it was discussed because I was in the emergency room with my wife, unfortunately, so I didn't get a chance to present my perspective on why I think it's so important. So I think the board was divided at the time about where the priority is, and I didn't get a chance to speak about it. And I think it's very important, and I think that's why it's maybe my not being there is the reason for it not being as a part of the department head. But that's that's partially my fault. I have to blame my wife.
We got your text messages, and I think it's.
I know, but I wasn't there to really speak about it.
To me, it's all about just trying fundraising first and wanting to do, put it on Facebook. The HVAC system needs repair. It's not a hill. I don't think any of us are going to die on this hill. It's just about trying to push the private fundraising as much as possible.
And I have to add one more thing about that. I know that people feel that private fundraising is important, but it's not like I feel that the library is sitting there going, we need so much money, but please don't give us the extra $40,000 because we can get that from the town. I don't feel that's the way they're raising money. I think they're doing the best job they can and already cutting the town's budget by almost $500,000. And I think that's important to look at what they do already and not penalize them because they do go out and raise so much money. And that's the way I feel about it.
I'll just say, I'm incredibly disappointed that this and the roof, that those things aren't already we aren't already putting money away from those in advance. That should have been done. I don't think we can crowdsource fund town buildings. I mean, it's a town building that we've got to maintain. And yes, the library fundraises, and they're already fundraising more of their budget. I don't know whether I agree with doing it or not, but I'm just incredibly disappointed that we haven't been putting money aside towards this in advance.
And I agree with you. This should have been started, and we've got $1 million expense staring us at us that we need to stop putting money away before, so we have it.
I mean, when it does fail, so if we put that in at zero now and it does fail, do we have money someplace that we can go grab money to say, okay, quick, we've got 2 weeks, we've got to repair this thing, whatever?
We don't. No, we've never, what's that?
Special town meeting, take it out.
Well, we could do that.
That's all you have to do.
We could do
Special
that.
town meeting and.
But that's not immediate, though.
What's that?
That's not immediate.
It just seems.
Did anyone have any specific questions around items in here that people are waiting to, because otherwise I think we have potentially could call to a vote. So, okay, Paul?
One question, I got two. One question, assessing software. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Don't we use the same software as Rockport, and doesn't the person who does the assessment do the assessments in Rockport?
Yes.
So why are we buying the same software in Camden that they're buying in Rockport? Why are we buying a computer in Camden that they are buying in Rockport? Why couldn't we share? What?
I don't think it's all the same software.
We are just public-facing database is different, but everyone uses Vision, so each town needs to have a separate license.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's an upgrade to a newer version of it, and it's, this will be sort of the one-time cost of the upgrade. It's not going to be the ongoing licensing cost.
Okay. And then with the Opera House Auditorium, I heard about the roof part of it, but is there other parts to it, Dave?
Good evening, everyone. I would be happy to do my best to explain. And I guess sort of starting with John, maybe I'll start with what I perceive to be the most urgent thing, which is the gutters. I feel like there's things we know about the gutters and things we think we know about the gutters. They're failing. On a sunny day, you can walk around the building and see daylight through them. They're past their lifespan. And so it's pretty obviously in need of help. We've been having a lot of water intrusion issues in the walls on the Washington Street face. And a number of folks have inspected, and we've made holes in the plaster and tried our best to figure out what it is. And the consensus is that you start at the top. And so because the gutters have to be done anyway, and there's also a pretty reasonable chance, I believe, that they're contributing to this water getting in, that's why it's really at the top of our list. So what I do know is I have some information about costs, and I don't know how much you want me to go on about this, or are there specific questions I can answer, or...
Okay. So those numbers basically just hit those items, though, right? That you just identified.
Correct. Can I ask you that before you go to the next question?
No, you go ahead. That was my second question.
Does this include doing something with the ice dam problems?
This is not that. This is just gutters.
Just the...
Because they have to be done before anything can be attached to them, which would be the
Okay.
process.
Is the ice causing some of the backup under the, no?
I'm sorry, say again?
When the ice backs up on the roof, is it leaking back up under the slate?
Not that I'm aware of.
It seems to be just during certain rain events.
Rain of a certain heaviness, and if it's wind-driven, even worse.
And I thought some of this needed to be repointed again.
Yeah. Some of it was. We've done some masonry work, and that was kind of that was part of the process of trying to figure out what was wrong. There's a small amount of masonry work that still has to be done, but we've already done a decent amount.
We also need to finish the window project, too.
Well, yes, that's another item on here. What John just talked about was windows. The windows in the building, I think it was 94, were all replaced with modern windows, except for ones that are not in public spaces. So that's in the back stairwells are still the original wooden windows, particularly those beautiful big Palladian ones. While we were trying to figure out how water was getting in, they looked like pretty serious culprits because they're just really old and really deteriorated. So we got the gentleman who is working on the Curtis Island Lighthouse, Greg Gordon, because he's getting out of the business, he recommended the people he thought were best, which is Jacobs Glass in Winslow. They gave us a price. Their recommendation was they would take them out, completely restore them, and then replace them and manufacture a storm window so that not only would the windows be protected, but it would be more efficient as far as heat loss and so forth. So we have a price for that too, which I think is in your information. I think all in it was around $33,000, and that's all the windows on that side of the building that were not replaced.
So this is part of your $290,000 price? The windows, the roof, or just, what's what?
I believe that is so. Does that sound right, Audra?
The gutters, the windows, the masonry repair, that's all part of that.
And I should just for clarity say, when we started gathering information about the gutters, it was broken down sort of into pieces, but it seemed to make sense to do them all because they're all deteriorated. You know, we started by looking at where they were worse, which was Washington Street. But the price that shows there is 3 sides of the building, and it includes adding gutters to the 2 dormers on this side, which don't have them, and adding additional snow fencing, which will just help for snow coming off that side of the building.
So I bet you're not going to Home Depot and buy vinyl gutters either.
No, this is copper.
Copper, right?
Yeah, what's up there now is painted galvanized.
Is it?
And, yep. It costs less and it lasts about a third as long. So the recommendation was go with copper. So that was this price.
Didn't we, once, not too many years back, weren't they copper?
I'm sorry?
Didn't we do the downspouts?
Downspouts are copper, yep.
Yep.
Sorry, John, that's 120, not 290.
Oh, it's down the line? That looks quick. Well, I try to get you more money, Dave, so you get your 3rd floor done.
Appreciate that, Jack.
Does this include the bathroom on the 3rd floor? That
I'm happy to talk about that. That's kind of broken out, I think, into a separate
That's a different
item.
little line.
Line, yeah.
$30,000. Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead.
If you are comfortable with the information about gutters, I'd be happy to sort of pivot and talk about the 2 Opera House items. And they are some stage lighting and the bathroom on the 3rd floor. In my opinion, the stage lighting is actually the greater need. And without going too deep into detail, the bulk of the stage lights we have are traditional incandescent stage lights, and they have something called dimmers, which are the big transformers that supply the power. Our dimmers are starting to go. They are also just really old. It's a product that's not manufactured anymore, so it's hard to repair them. And so Juniper, our technical director, her recommendation, which I think is a really smart one, is an interim step is to buy a certain amount of LED stage lights. So they're color washes. They use hardly any power. They run really cool. They're quiet. It's a direction that a lot of theater lights are going in. If we were to purchase those and put them over the stage, that would free up a lot of the channels on the dimmers. So if several failed, the show could still go on. It's a purchase we'd want to make anyway, I think, but we're moving it up on the list just in case the old dimmers that we have start to go. This is our fallback and our fail-safe. The number for that is 10,000, and that would give us something like 23 lights. So that's one item. And the second item is one that may be familiar to some folks. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just we've got two lines here. We've got 3,004 and then, 3,004 new Opera House auditorium and then Opera House building repairs. So can you tell us which one you're in when you're talking about these different things?
Yeah, so when he was talking about the lights and he's going to get into the third floor bathroom, that's the 30,000 for the Opera House auditorium.
Okay.
And then when he was talking about the gutters, masonry repair, windows, that was the Opera House building repairs.
Thanks.
So on the third floor, if you've ever seen it, there is a bathroom. I suspect it was never intended to be a public bathroom. It's very small. It's very unfinished. And what we would like to do is to replace it with a unisex, handicap accessible modern bathroom. And the proposal is we would take the footprint of the small bathroom and the storeroom next to it and alter it so that it's a larger bathroom and a smaller storeroom that would have like a caterer's sink. And by putting it where the existing bathroom is, it sort of knocks the cost down because all the plumbing's already there. We wouldn't have to move any load-bearing walls or major structural stuff. We have drawings for this that were developed over time by Chris Fasselt. He estimated the cost to be around $16,000, and I think I put in for, is it 18 or 20?
20.
I sort of went high because time has gone by and just as a contingency.
And that's in the line that we have right here.
Correct. Any questions on either of those that I can help with, or?
I have a question on the Opera House, something that I know I've asked this before, but in the past, there was a conversation about creating a Friends of 501c3 that could fundraise. We were talking about fundraising for the library. I think the Opera House is another place where we could potentially have 501c3 and be doing some fundraising for things. That 501c3, I was under the understanding it had been created but then never functioned, but I think you said that it never was actually created.
It is still on the drawing board. It's an idea, but it was never created.
We don't actually need to set up 501c3, though, is my understanding, in order to accept tax-deductible donations. Is that right, Audra? As long as when people donate, they can... As long as
foundations that won't give, unless it is to a 501c3. So you limit where you're getting your potential sources of money. Because a lot of foundations won't give to a municipality, but they'll give to 501c3.
But you could ask the library to be a fiscal agent, have a fiscal agent work together or something.
Or the
because you're the cultural heartbeat of Camden, blah, blah, blah.
That is true.
I just don't think we need yet another 501c3.
I'm just asking for if there is some facility for doing that, and that is true if somebody wanted to be a fiscal sponsor. And I love the cultural heartbeat of Camden. Awesome. There's the tagline.
Any other questions on any of these? We have a motion and a second, and you have a couple questions.
The police cruiser, if I remember correctly, and I'm looking back at the police chief's comment about the cars, was one car, and the most expensive was $36,000. Why do we have $45,000 in the budget?
So that would be for the hybrid cruiser.
Yeah, the hybrid cruiser was
Costed
down at
the lights
$36,000.
and the cage and things like that, which would be.
I thought it's about 3,000.
Yeah, that would be with that 45's to outfit the whole
Lighting
thing.
setup.
Well, there is.
Equipment.
That's the difference.
Yep. Yes.
Just a simple question, is there anything any of the other department heads thinks we should hear that maybe we haven't heard yet?
$63,000 of public works, am I right? With this sander and public works equipment?
You want to talk about that, or any
Sure.
questions?
Why not?
Shouldn't be wasted.
In the limelight tonight.
I trust you to write that in.
Two pieces of equipment.
Okay.
They're expensive equipment.
So, what do we have here? Baby Street's all set, LED lights, okay, we have the side, sander, side dump sander, some equipment, and Pearl Street, basically. So, what are your questions on the sander, or?
Yeah, and then this PW equipment, is that Public Works equipment is underneath that?
Yes, that's a piece of equipment there.
Yes, so
So that's a milling machine for our small loader, which is like a skid steer. And that's for, I sent a narrative about what that was. I don't know if you got that or not, but it's basically to use for like all these road repairs we do. But right this year with all the patching we would have to do, this is a little piece of equipment that goes on, that's an attachment to the loader that we have, and it mills the asphalt. It grinds it down, makes a nicer patch, and makes it so you're not just throwing asphalt down on top of something, and it unravels and everything, so it makes a neater patch and keeps it more of at the same elevation.
It goes around the pothole, grinds out a hole, and then you fill a fixed hole rather than an odd-shaped.
Right, yeah, and that we can grind around, we do sewer basin repairs, and it can go around that and do that, catch basins, pretty much anything. It's just like a grinder. So it's almost like a rototiller, but you set the elevation.
Reclaim on the road?
Pardon?
Like doing reclaim when they grind off the whole
No,
surface?
it's the same thing, only it's only, a few feet wide.
and then the sander?
And the sander is to replace, did you see any pictures of the sander that I sent?
I must have missed that, sorry.
The sander that we have a truck that's a 99 or 2000, I think it's 2000, dump truck, plow truck, and the truck we can keep it going, even though it's 19, 20 years old, but the body is pretty much rusted off of it. It's a dump body sander combination, so we can use it as a dump truck and a sander all at the same time. So that piece of equipment is made out of steel and it's rusted away, it's been patched, it's been sandblasted, painted over the years, it's pretty much gone. The new stainless steel sanders, we bought one a year or so ago for another truck that's a 1999, and that's worked out well. So that sander will be to replace this sander and keep the truck going without having to buy another truck.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Great. All in favor of the department heads, 100? We had a first and a second, Ed and Lisa. You have a question?
I got to go to Chris. So
That's okay.
we vote for the department head budget. What happens with the increase in budget? Where does the money come from? So we can say we want to do the 40,000 difference, but where does that all come from?
So really, a lot of these, taxes. So a lot of these projects, I proposed revenues to kind of offset them, but any
Additional
increase, yeah.
And so, okay.
And this would come back next week
Just
to look
money
at the
growth.
entire thing, and there would be a potential to cut someplace.
I'm good.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? One, okay. Thank you, everybody, for staying.
No, I think it was the library, but that's
They're not there to the contingency.
Should have been when we should have done that. Need to put in for the roof.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, that would have been a good to, yeah.
So now we're on page 43.
Are we,
Contingency reserve.
Revenue, it's on the agenda. Contingency and revenues are next.
yeah.
That's,
Yep.
okay, we're moving to the front of the book, to the green pages, revenue. Just the green pages, no number.
Yeah, and that's all guys
Under section 2.
Colorblind, I can't.
Going back and forth,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Usually
Yep.
Kathy, what about contingencies?
Do we want to go to contingency first? Yeah, let's.
Okay, well, sorry. Page 43.
First week.
We'll do contingency, then we'll look at revenue, and then we're gonna hear from Snowball and
Christian
wastewater.
Lundquist was here.
All right, so for contingency, we've just proposed to fund, flat funding for that, so $40,000 for this year, which is the same, that was the same level that was funded last year. So this contingency, it's really our only kind of flexible pot of money for any unforeseen expenses that we might have. You know, some years we're fortunate and we don't need to spend out of it. Other years we're not as fortunate. So we're just planning on this being sort of a normal, regular year.
So how are you tracking this year against?
How much have we spent?
We have spent about $1,200.
Out of that contingency.
Yeah.
And so the surplus of that, where does that, like, at the end of this fiscal year, there's 38.8 potentially left there, right?
It'll lapse into fund balance.
Oh, so it'll stay in the contingency fund?
No.
No, it would go into the surplus. We call that unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty much with any money we don't spend that we don't carry
How
forward.
much is in our unassigned balance at the moment?
We have about $4 million.
That's why we're very confident about this self-financing that we've been talking about for some of the bigger capital projects.
Did we spend some of that and have these meetings catered?
But can we spend some of that on the library HVAC system instead of raising taxes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think when we get to revenue, we can talk about that.
Okay.
I've seen some things in that nature.
So I move we approve the 40,000 for contingency.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? No, motion carries, very good. Okay, now to the green page.
All right, to revenue. So I think the most important part is going to be the offset to some of the capital projects that we talked about. So do you want to, while it's all fresh in everyone's mind, do we want to talk about that first? Then we can come to some of the more mundane revenue sources after? Okay. So really if you want to look at some of the offsets, it's really in the detail part below. So we've talked about some of this. So we talked about the withdrawals and, you know, what projects that's offsetting. But since we have a really healthy surplus, I'm proposing that we use some of that to offset some of the capital projects. And, you know, this is a good time to talk about what Carla was just proposing, which is using additional money out of the surplus to fund the library HVAC system. So out of the surplus, I'm proposing $150,000 just straight tax relief, which is something that we customarily do on a year-to-year basis when we know that the surplus can handle it. The $360, $290, that would be interfund borrowing. So the idea would be that the town would borrow from itself and we'd pay ourselves back over a 10-year period. So it'd be like a no-interest loan that the town pays to itself. So we're not going to be impacting the fund balance by using all of that money because we're going to be paying it back. But it saves us from having to pay, you know, interest on bonds or loans that we take out.
So it's got to be well over the recommended percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of borrowing from it, why not just go to town meeting and just ask for 500,000 or something out of contingency, out of the designated and pay for these smaller ones? Just again, not use it for borrowing, just because $4 million is more money than you need.
Oh, I agree. And for the small ones, I am proposing to do that.
So I think what John and Audra are talking about is our town is obligated to keep a certain amount of cash in the background, so if something goes wrong, they can still run the town. And there's some percentage ratio that's set up.
16.7.
It was 312, so that the board policy was 312. The auditor was 212, right?
Oh, you're talking $1 million.
No, 2 months' money.
Yes.
They were talking, and then we used to have a policy of 3 months.
Yes.
which we've never achieved for a long time.
Yeah.
We're always right at the doorstep, but.
We're well beyond that now.
Right, so I was saying, why not just go to town meeting and say, we're going to, these projects, or whatever it is, and just pay for them?
Yes, so I am proposing that with the float replacement for the harbor, which was $50,000, the match for the access road to the Snow Bowl, which was $65,000, and the habitat restoration, I'm proposing that we just spend out of surplus to fund those small amounts. So
you're going to take 150 out.
150 pure tax relief.
4 million right now, and the goal is what, to maintain?
It would be.
Is it 2 point something?
So, off the top of your head.
This would be just on the municipal budget, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Is it the entire one is around 21 million, and that would be 3.5 million school.
No, it's not the school budget, just the municipal budget.
Just the municipal budget, which is what someone told me. 10 million.
7, isn't it? 7 million?
Round
7 or 8?
It's the schools, the policy.
No, it's not, the fund balance is not for the school. It's basically a rainy day fund for the town. It's emergency funding for the town.
Anyway, it's all just.
So it's 1.3.
That's the
Always
ratio.
was around $2 million was the number.
So that's the ratio number?
That's what the auditors used to say, we should keep about $2 million.
But the point is, we're safe. So if I make a motion that says I want to allocate $40,000 of the surplus to go towards the library HVAC system, I'm not going to blow any of our percentages, right?
No.
I'd almost think you could probably take $600,000, including the 150.
If you say that and Nikki's still here, she'll want to.
You've got a number of projects you just pay for.
Right, so I'm making that motion. Anybody want to second it?
Second. A minute. So we're adding to the 945 an additional 40.
Yes. As an offset, right?
So how much you recommend to come out of surplus? Before the 40?
I was saying 945, so this would be 985 total.
And how much of it was going to be not funded back of the 9?
985 minus 360 minus 290.
I'm on it.
400.
400.
I like, so
I like
now
that
we're in
for-
discussion. I like Audra's borrowing back. It's sort of like reserves in reverse. It's, it'd be nice to, as Sandy was saying, save up money ahead, but it's kind of.
But if you use the contingency, I mean, the undesignated to pay for a lot of these projects, it's not going to hit the tax rate. It's just offset. You've got the money there, they've already put it in there. It's for the running of the town. Use it to pay for it because you're well over your goal.
And we still have enough for our.
Oh, more than enough.
And yeah, I mean, just to simplify, there's a surplus of 4 million.
Yes.
You need to keep 2 million.
Yes. Well, a little bit more than that.
What's the answer on that? Because that's why I'm confused.
Yeah.
It's 2 point something. So if the surplus is 4 point something million, you're proposing to take out 900,000, which would put us about 3.2, which keeps us well above.
Right. Right. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine in terms of our fund balance and what we need to keep on hand. The other thing that Jody and I have to look at too with all of this is cash flow and being able to pay our bills from month to month. But we've got a plan to make sure that, even if we take out this money for certain projects, we're doing it during strategic times of the year when we know that the cash flow is going to be good.
So you use that for like a line of credit almost? So you're going in?
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you charge yourself interest for that, or it's just a no interest loan?
We talked about it. We weren't really sure.
We were grappling with this tonight because we thought, should we charge ourselves the interest that we would be getting if this money was sitting in a cash account collecting like 1.25%? And we thought it really isn't. It's going to be too. It's the complication and headache of tracking that is more than it would be worth that we'd get back from it.
So how much are we going to pay outright, and how much?
Well, that's
are we
what I'd
gonna
like
pay
to
back?
do before we voted, is be able to identify how many of these we could actually pay cash and get rid of them as recommended to the town. Because I just think it makes sense just to pay for them versus,
So you're talking about not interfund borrowing?
well, if you got 3 million, you're at 3 million, you're saying stay, you're at 4, you're saying stay somewhere around 3 million, right?
Yeah, so right now, if we paid everything.
Well, I guess you've already got 400,000 identified
85,000.
you want to borrow, right? And the rest of it's going to be paid for out of undesignated surplus.
We might have to pay for a library roof or something at some point.
Well, if that comes around, that's a different bond. That's a whole different thing.
So Audra,
We're
what
not
do
talking about that tonight.
you see as the downside of that?
Well-
Because you've obviously proposed it as interfund borrowing for those two, so.
I mean, I think for the larger projects that we would normally bond, I don't think that we want to deplete our surplus to the tune of almost $1 million in one financial year. So that's why I'm proposing for the two bigger projects, we do it as interfund borrowing.
Because
But
otherwise we would bond those things.
Right. But I do think for the smaller ones that are, they're just at a level where we would never take out a bond for something that was only, that was under $100,000. It's just too small an amount of money to borrow,
You're
bother
basically
with that.
suggesting 500,000 to pay for things and about 400,000 to borrow.
Is it, it's about six borrowing for,
650-ish.
yeah.
John, would you feel better if the term of the loan was shorter, maybe 5 years instead of 10 to 15?
No, I just would like to
It's
take some of the money in undesignated surplus and pay down these things because that's what it's there for. It's, we've got way too much in there.
I've got a question on this. Regardless of which way we end up doing this, this is not going to affect the actual tax rate.
No.
Because this money is coming out of money we already have.
You already paid
Yes,
it.
correct.
We've already collected that in taxes or whatever, and,
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Do we vote on that, or do we vote on?
Well, she's already got it included in her revenue line.
So I've made a motion which was seconded to add 40,000 from surplus in to cover the library HVAC. There are, multiple lines of proposals in the budget for revenue sources, and I suppose if anybody wanted to try to amend individual lines as to how they work, those are motions that are potentially made, but right now we just have one.
Adding 40 into that.
So do we need to vote on that amendment?
Yes.
985. So we have a motion, we have a second?
Yeah.
All in favor? No opposed? Very good.
All right, and so for use of TIF, so we're proposing the $65,000 lease purchase for the Knox Mill and Knowlton Street parking lot. That would come from TIF proceeds. $15,000, we talked about that, combined with the 20, that would be our match for the Route 1 South pedestrian project. The seawall restoration, the $75,000 to set aside for, whether we fix the seawall or do something completely different with that sort of area where the dam meets the seawall. That would come from TIF revenue. $80,000 of the whole $120,000 project to repair the Opera House building coming out of the TIF, and $30,000 for the auditorium, the whole cost of the lights and the third floor bathroom repair. So that would be $265,000 total out of the TIF.
Those lights fall under that main energy, since it's going LED?
What's that?
Would that fall under the main energy reimbursement program, since they're LEDs?
It could certainly,
So there might be some.
there might be some opportunity
rebates
for that,
or whatever.
yeah.
So looking for just simplifications, so you're proposing 1.2 million from surplus and TIF,
Correct,
and that's to offset the 1.2 million essentially in the capital improvements we talked about.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Is that what
Do
you
we
made,
have to-
Ed?
do we have to do these separately? Or-
Ed, isn't that what you made? Motion with that plus 40?
All we've done is add 40 to the surplus.
Okay.
So does anybody have any questions just generally about the revenues? Because there's all, these are the ones that specifically offset the capital projects, but we have other revenue sources for different elements in the town. So if you have any questions about those as well, before you vote on it, answer them.
Are we doing all revenues at this point in time? So just
these out. It's minus this.
One of these, or did we just do that one because of the amendment?
You typically do the bottom line,
Okay.
you know, like the
So, yeah,
total.
If there's any more discussion, then. I have a question. State revenue sharing, I know that was up at the State House yesterday. Governor Mills' budget is to keep the revenue sharing at the same level. And we're,
I think she proposed 2.5%, and we're at 2 now. But I'm not optimistic, so I just left it at 2%.
so even though the number,
What if they bump it up to 5%?
Now, what you wanted,
What's that?
they want to take more out of the surplus.
So we
right?
collected about 200,000 last year, so I thought that was a safe,
We just agreed to.
you know, holding the line estimate.
Two separate things to do this.
Did we do what it would theoretically look like if we got the?
We didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry.
We wanted to show everybody what it would look like if we got $500,000 from the state, but.
Easily put 5,000 in there.
Okay, well, what are we doing now? Are we getting the these and taking them out of the surplus?
Mostly, because that's what I asked for.
We did, well, we get reimbursed by the state for 90% of it.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
surplus is paying for it. Yeah.
question on our yacht club lease.
Yes.
Is that a standard negotiated thing, or is it, when was the last time it was negotiated?
So it's actually up for renewal this year.
Okay, and who makes that negotiation?
They do, right up there.
Selectmen. Okay.
So as a member of the budget committee, charge them more.
Oh,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the 1.250 revenues. Is that right, Ed? 1.250?
That's correct.
All right.
Can I ask a question about the Opera
Where are you
House?
finding
Just
it?
second it for discussion.
The Opera House rentals are look pretty low compared to historical. Is there a reason for that?
Are you talking about the appropriation or?
90-1601.
I'm sorry, what?
16 revenues, 90-1601.
Right, okay, so we're proposing 50,000 because, if you look to the left there, we had originally, let's see what it was, FY18, they had proposed 80,000. It's really not a realistic revenue that we would see from the Opera House.
What was PopTech when PopTech was, because I know PopTech has announced they're going to stay up in Northport, so is that the difference?
It's a combination of things. I think with the new Opera House manager, he is able to provide us with more realistic numbers on what we do anticipate for rentals.
So there was some commingling of different revenue sources from the Opera House. So we've got rentals and productions, and the productions, they sit in these restricted accounts that, you know, they're kind of outside of the operating budget. And I think in the past, we found that there was some commingling of the revenue from those productions and the rental revenue. And so Jody and Dave Morrison have done a lot of work to untangle all of that. So I think in the past, the numbers looked a lot higher than they actually were if they had been untangled at the time. And so, you know, all we can do is sort of draw a line in the sand and say, this is our best guess going forward as to what the pure Opera House rental income will be versus income that we get from doing productions. And so that's why it's so much lower.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I have a question. Are there more finger floats now, or are you raising the cost? It's going from actuals of 26 to a budget of 31.
Yes, so the select board just did a fee order for all the different departments that cause fees or that charge fees, and they looked comprehensively at the harbor and raised finger floats and pretty much
It's like an 11-year waiting list.
the
cruise ship fees.
Cruise ship fees.
Was what-
Yeah, they looked at everything that had really long waiting lists. And
Yeah.
Any other
Yours and then
questions or discussion on the budget? Revenue? No? So we have a motion from John and then a second from Ed to accept it at one.
So I think we have two votes. One is on other financing sources, and that's the one that John made, and I seconded at 1.25. And then the second motion would be the bottom line of total, which would now be,
The total is $3,543,613.
thank you.
I'll second that. You doing that?
Yeah, I'll make that motion too.
I'll second it.
So, two motions.
I'm sorry, what was this, the second one? There's that one.
We added the 40,000 to the,
Right, that one I got, but what was the other one?
added right here, 3,543, the total.
40,000.
I thought you said 1.6.
That was up here, the other financing.
Is everyone clear?
So we're first voting to adjust the other financing sources, which is what we went through with surplus and TIFs. And if we approve that, then we vote on the total revenue picture, which would figure out to be $3,543,613.
613.
Yeah, 613.
So, all in favor of the first, which is the other financing sources? Anyone opposed? No? Okay. And then total revenues? All in favor? Revenues? No opposed? 100% carries both. So, do we still have Puff to listen to the snowball? Yeah.
You guys are.
Well, now, just so we're all clear, both of these are for information only, right?
Yes.
There'll be no more voting. It's just learning.
It's too long. It is. Everyone, this is Tom Beauregard, Mountain Manager. I have it.
So you skied this year?
63.
Is it 60 to make it work?
This is what the budget is based on a 60-day. Yeah.
Hooray.
And how long are you extending the season?
Well, right now we're going to be closed tomorrow because there's rain coming, and then Saturday and Sunday, and then reassess, but most likely the following weekend as well.
Oh, good.
Open or closed? This weekend?
Good for you.
Everybody get?
I don't have
I have an extra one, but it's mine. I've written on it. So since the one that you all have in your packet, we have met, and there's a few items that we've tweaked, but I can point those out to you now, or we can go through the process and later, but maybe it's probably best to do it right now. Expenses. So the first page is basically taking each department and showing that we're going to be in the black by $408. So the next.
Was that a stretch budget, or was that like, how did you feel going into last year when you made the budget? Did you feel like it would be a challenge, or?
No. If you were to look at our actuals, we are in the red on some line items, but we are definitely in the black for the whole budget. Some places where we went over were like in snowmaking. We chose to make more hours of snow so that we could get Muscle Ridge and Northeaster open this year. So, but in the end, it worked out revenue-wise, we feel, because people were very pleased with that choice. So, The next page is revenue, and we have a couple of new ways of doing our revenue. We are adding use of surplus. If you look under administration, under ski club membership, we're putting in 33 from hopefully money that we can bank from this season. And that is specifically going to go toward maintenance to one of the groomers at the tune of about 30,000. And then, what was the other three for? The chute repairs. The toboggan chute has some sections that are 80 years old. There are some trees on the bottom of the chute holding the chute above the streams that are 80 years old. So we have to put a little bit of time and effort into that chute sooner than later.
No, the Rotary's not doing that.
Isn't that part of the charm?
80 years though, that's... Does anyone have any questions on the revenue side here? Okay, so we'll move along. The next is administration. And I'm down from last year's budget. I think we're super efficient in the office, and
Your workers' comp insurance is in our general town budget, so it's not in here.
That's correct. We do have general liability insurance is specific to ski areas, which you'll see there is the 40,000, and that is based on skier visits. It's not a flat thing, so we don't pay as much as the big areas pay. It's based on our skier visits. So. Okay, no questions there. What's credit card fees? So this year was the first year that the credit card processing fees went back to the customer. We heard a little grumble about it, but it's been a massive savings to the town. And it still feels like over half of our customers are still using cards versus cash and checks. So we're keeping that at 2,000 because we keep one of our credit card processing companies. We pay $50 a month to process gift cards, and that's huge for a lot of the parents and gifts at Christmas time. So.
You said 2,000, it said 1,000 in here.
Last year we budgeted 1, but we had some gift card.
These are the changes that have resulted from the meeting that we had after
Okay,
those
so
were
it's not in the
printed.
paper that you passed
Oh, that's
out?
right.
Yeah.
I'm seeing.
Sorry
it.
about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So you're seeing 1, but it is 2,000. That was one change.
Okay.
Next is the lodge, and we have upped the equipment maintenance line there. That's for half of our new septic pump that we need. So that's being bumped up to 3,500.
Why did that fail?
Can you help me on that one?
We're not sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you guys tag your head.
Now, we help out with the pumps, and there's obvious one of them is definitely laboring. It runs about twice as long as the other one, and is way below. We did drawdowns on them. Both pumps were way below where they should be pumping, and where they were when they first put them in. So there's one new pump in there, pump number 2, which runs a lot less than pump number 1. Pump number 1 is probably on its last leg, but we think there could be some kind of restriction in the pipe that goes up to the leach field as well. So this coming summer we'll do an inspection of the line and see if we can find that restriction, and if there's one there, we'll call and fix it.
Somebody will. Shovels. Do your camera go up that pipe?
No, we don't have the camera to do that, but a company called J. Prescott has a camera that can do 800 feet. What is it, around 1,000 to 1,200 feet?
Right around
And so if it's not in that 800-foot section, we'll have to decide if we dig up halfway between, cut the pipe, and inspect in both directions. Hopefully we'll find it without having to cut the pipe.
Is it possible to run the camera down from the upper side, from the field itself?
Yeah, there's a distribution box up there, and that's one.
So
We're gonna go in
you
there.
don't have to cut in the middle, so you
Well,
can go from both ends.
We're gonna do that, that's part of the plan, but we still have to cut in the middle if it's not within that 800 feet. They can go 400 feet.
Oh.
So we're gonna go 400 feet in each direction, and then hopefully it's there, not.
When you said 800, I thought it meant 800 in each direction, but no.
Right.
All right.
That system's been trouble
Yeah.
to get go.
Yeah.
Because I remember a couple of the pumps unthreaded and it's
I'm hoping that hopefully something, maybe when they were doing logging for the expansion, that there was too much weight put on it, maybe.
Flatten the pipe?
And yeah, it's squat.
probably could have, right? 'Cause that was put in before the.
It was.
Well, we had to, or you wouldn't have been open that year.
So curiosity, where is the leach field?
It's up by the double.
Yeah, it's up just to the left side of the double. You can just barely see it. Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Where the green grass is.
If you get a snow melts. We'll just look to the left and you'll see a mound and there's the little pipe sticking up out of it.
Yeah, that's right, where all the trails go through, right?
No, cooler. It's on the cooler trail.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I know what to watch for.
The other, the
Can't miss it.
Yeah, the lodge building improvements, we added 2,000 to that than the one that you're looking at. We are in desperate need to put in a new rug in the main part of the lodge. So we're adding half of that to this budget.
AstroTurf?
AstroTurf, no, we have a few options. So, but it has to hold up to a lot of things,
Yeah.
so.
And still be good for weddings.
And be maintainable, something that you can actually vacuum or do what you need to do.
That's correct. So does anyone have any questions on this lodge maintenance line? The total will be 59,050 with those two added in. Alpine, this is the big one. There's a couple of changes in this one. Under professional development, which 7015-1202, there was $1,000 added to that for some more training for staff. And then Alpine Vehicles Repair and Maintenance is where we have that groomer, the groomer maintenance, 30,000.
Which line is that?
The 7015-2005. So the total there will be 602,900. 602,900. Thank you. Pick up.
How big is your contingency fee?
Contingent, that's,
I mean, you've got 20 allocated to it. Are you saving that up? Is that,
I think this is yearly, correct?
Yeah.
that's just a yearly?
It's a yearly one. Yep.
Yeah, we tend to carry it forward if it's unspent.
Yeah. The lift repair and maintenance line is up. That's 2015-2071 because we are purchasing a detentioner. Yep. No, it's for the chairlift, but Tom, you're great at explaining if you want.
So the triple chair, what they call the clip, is woven into the cable. And in order to service those things, you have to open the cable up, that's what the detentioner is. It grabs the cable and squeezes it together, and that opens the rope. And then you don't stick your fingers in there, but you pull the clip out, put a new one in, and then you release it, and it cinches the rope back down onto the clip. But the one we have is probably the original one, and it's failed multiple times when we've been using it. And it's 1,400 psi of hydraulic pressure right next to your face when you're using it. So I've had the pins blow out of it, I've had the shoes bust on it. We've had Rockport Steel work on it multiple times. So the new one is like 16.5 or something, but it's a lot nicer. It's upgraded and everything.
Works.
Safer.
Yes, yes.
So that's in there as
Something
well.
that you have, when you work on that cable, you do it,
Every year we have to do 20%, so this year we're gonna do 32 chairs. I'm hoping the old one's gonna make 32 chairs, but next year I have to do 100% relocation of 160 chairs, and it's not gonna last.
is that how often do you do the 100% relocation?
Every 2 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What's in the trail maintenance supplies? Is that really supplies, or is that actually just being out managing the trails? And is it what trails?
It's all the trails on the mountain. That could be off-season if we have erosion, that kind of stuff.
And so you're cutting it back, or you just, that's more accurate reflection of spend?
It's more accurate.
Because we've got some trails to work on, if you have some money to spend.
Yes. I know. That's really probably more in the Parks and Rec budget, though.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay, so moving on, unless anyone has questions.
What about the cable? When do you have to replace that?
Hopefully not in my lifetime.
Oh, is that right? It lasts that long?
Well, the double will last quite a while. The triple, I'm guessing like 20 years or so before.
Nice.
What's the age of it now?
Right now, 4 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then we're moving on to the rental shop. The only thing that really went up here are some wages. Minimum wage keeps going up on us, so next year we'll be paying, first-time employees $12 an hour, so we're accounting for that. And this one?
So your rental cost is $44,555, but you anticipate making $75,000 out of it? So
Yes.
that's good.
Yes.
Now, the deal with Charlie's still going, or is that it this year?
I think we're close to being finished, yep.
One more year?
Yeah.
Is he training these?
Yep, he trained the staff this year. We are looking at possibly a different machine that we can use when we're open, because the current grinder you can't hear. I mean, it's deafening, so you can't do it when people are around. But we're looking at possibly a stone grinder.
You're talking about the heater in the lodge?
That's loud too, isn't it? No.
No, I think you should give the backstory to that, because I know what you're talking about as well, or not.
From the
You've got a relationship with someone.
We used to have a contract with the Side Country Sports, who used to be the vendor at the Snow Bowl, used to also maintain all our rental equipment for us. We've now taken it all in-house, and our staff is now doing all of their rental equipment. Maintenance, thank you. Okay. Any more questions? Now we're moving on to toboggan. Actually, I did need to say that toboggan chute repairs was on the Alpine budget. We added $3,000 to that budget. I forgot it. That's where that ended up. It was at the bottom of the Alpine. 70/30 and then new. 3,000. They didn't see the rental shop. So the rental shop final total was $45,600. That's with the wage and the FICA increase. And then Toboggan Nationals pretty much stayed the same. We didn't spend the actuals for this year. We didn't spend as much as we had budgeted under marketing, so we went down on that a little bit, but we did have more expense under the equipment rental. which includes like porta potties, the sound system, the other things that we have to rent for the weekend.
Radios.
And radios, yeah. So, and then the last page is the capital improvements and debt. We now no longer have a snow gun upgrade debt, so that went down on us.
Beth,
Yes.
question for you back on the toboggan thing. Under parking,
Yep.
does that include the, maybe I'm looking at the wrong spot. What was the cost of the buses that we,
So that comes out of,
that come?
we only pay the bus driver's wages, so that's out of the wage, the top line.
so
Because
that's
the school district is very nice in letting us use buses.
We're not paying gas or anything on that?
Yeah, we probably do pay for the fuel for that weekend up at the bus garage, but
Okay.
yeah. The parking line, that is what the half we give back to the Rotary. This year, we actually cut a check for $6,000 because we brought $6,500 because we brought in 13 grand in parking. But it was a weird scenario because it was so cold. People were coming and going and not feeling bad about it. So it was the most we've ever made in parking. So it was good. So that's it. Any questions? Oh my gosh. So a meeting tonight.
The capital improvements page?
Oh, yeah. I think I said it was before you, there's no more snow gun upgrade debt, so we're going down.
We're not selling or getting anything out of the old down.
Sold 7 of them, but we still have a couple left. Sold like 7 left.
What you get for 7?
3,500, I think.
Yeah, I think
think
you got
so.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty good. I know somebody was interested in the other 7, but I'm not sure if they sold them or not.
Yeah, Midwest. Someone in the Midwest, I remember.
Yeah.
They were only interested in them a year ago. They never-
Yeah, I mean, it's like a thing.
Yeah.
We have snow guns for sale.
Well, we traded them in and they're selling them for us.
We done? No, we have wastewater.
So, do they vote like in, they don't do anything?
You don't want us to give you a blessing.
Well, thank you for listening. Yes, absolutely.
I changed my beard, that's why I do it.
Okay.
You like the look, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's just hold it together for a few more minutes. Whip us through the wastewater.
Yes, yeah. First couple of pages here, pretty much the same from year to year. On the first page, the administration has gone up, mostly due to our insurance going up, and also there was a 3% raise proposed for all employees this year, so gone up as well.
So I just had a question about the overtime. Is that just your budgeting for it? Because you didn't use it this year. You only used 355 and yet you're budgeting.
Right, yes, and we just hired a new employee that, we had a vacancy, we hired an employee, and that vacancy before the person wasn't on call.
People were doing it.
Yeah, so he's an hourly person, he's on an on-call roster now, so we have to pay him overtime on the weekend. It's good to have him on call because only 2 of the operators were on call, so every other weekend they were having to work. So now we've got a three-person rotation. It's fair for those other 2.
How did you make up with your summer intern that you had from somewhere?
Yeah, we actually had 2 summer interns this year, and that allowed us to just about finish up the door-to-door surveys. We've got a little bit of mop-up to do, but we don't need any more help to do that. We can do that ourselves with the personnel we have now. So, any other questions on that first page? Or?
GIS update, that's a jump.
GIS.
The actual was 467 and they're budgeting 3,000?
Yeah, that's,
28?
yeah, sporadically we update our GIS maps.
Okay.
And so that'll be quite different from year to year.
Oh, okay.
We're due to do that again. We should get that updated.
Do we have a full map of the sewer system that somebody can look at and see where all the sewer pipes go?
Yes, we do. Yeah. I can give you a copy of that or email it to you or.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's see, sewer plant and collections. That's pretty much the same.
Where's the property insurance gone up so much?
On that first page.
Yeah.
Jody gives me those numbers, and I go with them.
So what were you talking?
Property insurance.
From 3,800 to 11.
Yeah, this all stems from, we moved away from Maine Municipal and went with a new company, Trident? Yes. And it's all how they are allocating for each department what they should be paying. It's much different with this company.
So is the overall less? Some went up and some went down?
Some went up, some went down, yeah.
Yeah, overall, we're saving, but it's, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, Dave?
Yes.
Or Audra, I noticed the workers' compensation is up as well, and Audra, you'd mentioned in previous meetings that our workers' comp across town was way down. We're saving a lot of money. Why is it up for wastewater?
Same principle there is, and this isn't Trident, it's not the same company that does our workers' comp, that does our property and casualty, but just the way that it's billed.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that fair?
It is.
summation?
It's, when we get our workers' comp bills, it's,
Looks like your actuals are always higher than your budget, so it looks like your budget this year is going to match your actuals.
yeah, it's not broken down the way that it should be when it comes to, because it's all one bill. So I have to allocate out percentages, wastewater, not snowball, but wastewater in the town, and this is how the actuals presented.
Okay, O&M, we went over that one. Pump station O&M. I actually dropped the pump station maintenance. I had actually increased that to 30,000 this fiscal year to pick up 2 VF drives that needed to be replaced. Those have been replaced, so I see no problem in dropping that back down to 20,000. And let's see, reserves. This year we've got a half a dozen projects we'll be doing out in the collection system. What happens, Rick lets me know when he's going to resurface a road or a street. And I look at the pipe and see whether or not it's in good shape or we should change that out. What we don't want to do is have him resurface the street and then a year or two later I dig it up. And as it turns out, we've got 5 street projects and it's all clay pipe that should be changed out on those streets.
You're destroying one of the great myths of public works.
Yes, what's
They
this?
don't work together.
Oh, no. Rick and I work together all the time. And Rick also gets hold of main water and, that gives them a chance to change out their pipe and actually, budget for it. So I've cut the amount we're putting into reserves way down because of that. We're going to spend a lot of money on projects this year. And on that next page, you can see the projects under capital improvement that Pearl Street, that's a big project from Park to John Street. That's a good win for us because we have some clay pipe there that's very difficult to clean because it's so offset. And, it's a good project, get out of the way. We'd like to do all of Pearl Street, but we'll chip away at it.
Question for you about, on Pearl Street, they seem to do a lot of flushing of the pipes there.
Where now?
Pearl Street. They seem to do a lot of flushing.
Right.
There. Is that going on all over town, or is there some?
Well, we have some areas that are trouble areas, and we do them monthly. Otherwise, we try to do the entire system once a year. But yeah, there are some that are problem areas, and we have to do them monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the places. And, replacing that clay pipe we'll fix that. We won't get it all this year, but, so you'll still see them out there in another section of Pearl Street.
Okay.
Quite routinely, so. And then the other projects, we're going to fund with reserve funds. And I put that 30,000 in for the collection system reserve because 150,000 is a good, healthy number, just because these projects cost as much as they do. And I am recommending a 1% increase in our fee, because we are cutting it close as far as revenue coming in this year. So just to play it safe, that's about roughly about $13,000 more in revenue. Okay.
Any other questions? Well, we can, did you want to talk about the school coming next week? Did we say yes to that?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, and Maria Libby's all set to come and present.
But the students are doing something as well, right?
No.
How did I read that?
The watershed students, did you want to talk about that?
I didn't get any feedback from them. So the Watershed students contacted us and asked if they could come make a presentation about how our budgetary choices might make a difference with, you were using carbon-based fuels, I think. I told them tonight wasn't a good night, and I said if you have something that we look at, that would be great. I think we're not quite sure what next week looks like in terms of how much stuff we have to do, so maybe we'll...
It could be pretty light, because it's Maria coming in, and then it depends on, because I don't think we had a quorum the night that everyone discussed the provider agencies and whether or not you wanted those presentations.
There aren't that many, so we may see if they want to give us 15 minutes or something like that.
Randy, that's right, he said he would come, so...
Can I ask a question before we adjourn? Do we know what, everything that we voted on, or is it getting input as we're voting? So can we know before what the impact of all our votes are before we come back?
Yes. Yep.
Right now?
Yeah, Jody can tell you right now if you'd like to hear. Cloud. Actually, I was gonna say if you refresh.
I was going to say I could just plug in.
While we're waiting for Jody. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you. I was just going to say, I won't be here next week. I have to go to Los Angeles in business next week, so I won't be here. So thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you for letting me interrupt as often as I have. And we'll see you all next year.
See you at town meeting. Nice job.
So, for the Budget Committee recommendations, the total general fund expense is $9,640,468. The revenue is $3,543,613.
Sorry, could you say that one again?
$3,543,613.
Can you tell us what the variance is on that from where we started?
We saved $28.12.
I think we spent about a few hundred.
We can give you percentages, that's really
Yeah,
quick, so.
I can give, right now, the net increase over last year with your votes is 3.5%.
Bunch of spendthrifts.
And where did we start? 3.22?
2.6.
Are you going to put together a summary for the next meeting, so we all have?
Yeah, I've got to, make sure all the numbers are.
Of course, thank you.
Can we get it before the meeting, so?
Of course, yeah, I can email it to you guys.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Thanks, everyone, for your endurance.
I'm gonna have a-